This is Rogers TV.
One for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 10th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, cloudy -4. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The City of Ottawa is restricting access to TikTok on all city-issued devices. City News reporter Chris Curris with the details.
A memo from the city's information officer says a review has raised concerns about the Chinese-owned app, which specializes in the sharing of short videos. It said details would be shared to all city employees via a corporate email, along with any follow-ups. The memo says if TikTok is required for business purposes, it can be accessed through an internet browser because it does not present the same level of risk. Both Ottawa Public Health and the city's Rec Services Department use the app. Now, on personal devices, it will be limited if they also access city-managed applications. The City of Gatineau has also restricted the app. Chris Curry, City News.
With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
It's a mostly cloudy day again for Ottawa and Smiths Falls. A few sunny breaks and that's it. The weekend is very quiet and seasonal, but we have measurable snow in the forecast for Monday. So later today, a few flurries possible and even through Saturday, but nothing that's really impactful. But Monday and Tuesday, we have back-to-back snow, 5 to 10 centimeters Monday, with an additional 5 centimeters on Tuesday with very windy conditions. So some blowing and drifting snow as well. For today, the guaranteed high +1.
The federal government is now officially launching public consultations on a foreign agents registry, which aims to block foreign interference in our democracy. Public Safety Minister Marco Mendocino made the announcement this morning in Ottawa, saying consultations begin immediately and will continue until the 9th of May.
Consultations will involve direct engagements with communities, stakeholders, and the general public, and these consultations will inform the path forward.
And the registry would require people who act on behalf of a foreign state to advance its goals to disclose their ties to the government employing them. Now, failing to comply could result in fines or even prison time. This comes as the Trudeau government faces backlash for their handling of interference by the Chinese government in our last two elections and growing pressure to launch a public inquiry. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome to the Sam Laprade Show. Thank you so much for joining us. Sam is off today and all of next week. Derek Fage here, host of Daytime Ottawa on Rogers TV, filling in. I'm sorry I'm coming in laughing and giggling a bit because I'm not connecting to the internet here on the computer, which makes it, challenging to do a 3-hour radio show. But that's okay. I'm going to just fly by the seat of my pants. What the heck? What are we talking about today, Derek? Well, let's go through what's happening on the show today. Of course, as you know, we continue to follow the Russian war in Ukraine. A massive missile attack in Ukraine over the last 48 hours, We're going to be talking about, the latest on Ukraine with Jeffrey Johnston, international affairs columnist with the Kingston Whig Standard. Always enjoy having a chat with Jeffrey. And we're going to talk about his latest column. The headline to his column is Saving Ukraine's Children from War. It's an excellent column. I really encourage you to check out the Kingston Whig Standard. He talks about a number of things, the Catholic Church's response. He has an excellent interview on there as well. He talks to people on the ground in Kyiv, how children are coping with the trauma in Ukraine at the moment as well. So we're going to go in depth and really discuss how children are being affected by the war in Ukraine. Also going to be talking today on today's show about this very interesting story that I came across yesterday, and I sent it to Noah right away as soon as I saw it and said, let's find somebody to discuss this topic. And that is the RCMP is investigating alleged Chinese government police stations in Quebec. This is an incredible story. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police are investigating 2 alleged covert police stations in Quebec that it believes are working on behalf of the Chinese government. The RCMP have confirmed that the 2 locations under investigation are in Brassard on the South Shore, and there's also one. It is called right in Montreal's Chinatown. So both centers, they say, have served as resource centers for Chinese and Asian communities. This information was initially reported by the Journal de Montréal and then confirmed by Radio-Canada. And the RCMP has said investigators are taking steps to detect and disrupt these criminal activities supported by a foreign state that could also threaten the safety of people living in Canada. I had never heard a story like this before. My understanding, it's not the first time that they've investigated something like this, the RCMP. So Michael Kempa, Associate Professor of Criminology at the University of Ottawa, is going to join us on the show and, just talk about the situation and what it means and how concerned we should be about things like this. We've got the Talk Back Hour, of course. Coming up, we do that. It's not the Talk Back Hour. Sorry, that's David's show. Lunch with Sam is what I'm getting at. This is what happens when you start the show with no internet access. With Lunch with Sam will now be Lunch with Derek because Sam is off today and for the next few days. And we're going to talk about a few things. Ottawa is turning temporary. Ottawa is going to be turning temporary shelters. As the city searches for permanent housing solutions. We've talked about this on the show before. We called homelessness a crisis, affordable housing a crisis. We deemed it an emergency back in 2020. What steps can be taken to combat Ottawa's housing crisis? We'll discuss that. And as you know, the CEOs of Canada's top grocery stores were summoned this week. We're asking if the government did a good job. Did they ask the right questions? Are the grocers to blame? Do we need an excess profit tax? I know that's something David discussed on the Talk Back Hour as well, and a lot of people were not necessarily interested in charging these big grocery stores an excess profit tax because eventually I'm sure that would trickle down and we as citizens would end up paying for something like that. Of course, we continue to follow this story here on City News, and that is election interference. And a question we'll be asking during Lunch with Derek is the Liberal government failing to ensure foreign election interference, that it's not a threat, right? Pierre Poilievre keeps hammering Justin Trudeau with question after question about foreign interference. Justin Trudeau, not necessarily the Prime Minister, not necessarily doing a good job in answering a lot of really straightforward questions on the topic. And I think many Canadians, including myself, have been very frustrated with the response so far. And as you know, we always like to have fun. It's a Friday, so we like to have fun on Friday's show. Keith Whittier, movie reviewer on the show. We're going to be looking at a few things. One of them is getting a lot of talk because there's been excerpts of Chris Rock's Selective Outrage stand-up where he really takes Will Smith and his wife Jada to task. I mean, it's a no-holds-bar pretty much attack on the Smiths as part of this. But, of course, he talks about a number of... My understanding is that's kind of the last sort of 10 minutes of this stand-up routine. So we'll ask Keith, because that's getting all the attention. But what about the rest of the content, right? The last 10 minutes of the show is getting all the attention, but we'll find out, what other things he discusses. How angry is Chris Rock? I mean, he is calling it selective outrage. So we'll find out a little bit more about that, what we can expect. He's going to be talking Die Hart, not Die Hard, Die Hart, H-A-R-T, and Scream 6. I mean, if there's anything we needed, it was another film in the Scream series. I'm not even sure if I've watched... Oh, no, I did watch the first one. But I have not watched 2 through 5. So we'll find out what you can expect in Scream 6 this year. And as many of you know, I am a huge curling fan. I began curling 5 years ago and have become obsessed with the sport. I curl about 3 times a week myself. I'm not very good because it takes a lot of time to become really good at this sport. I mean, I've said it before. What I love about this sport is you can have early success, but to perfect it takes an awful lot of time. And I'm really excited because at about just after 11:30, Matt Dunstone, known as the Sheriff, he is the skip for Manitoba. He is currently 8-0 so far at the Tim Hortons Brier. He's in sole possession of first place in Pool A at the moment. So we'll get an idea of, how Matt is feeling. I know, actually, we were supposed to have him at a couple of different spots today, but he got in touch with, and big thanks to Matt if he happens to be listening at any point. I doubt he is, because I know the team is back on the ice and they are practicing. He actually sent a note to us at about midnight last night. He was probably just, coming back from the patch, and sent us a note and saying, well, it looks like the coach wants us on the ice at 11 o'clock. That's when we were supposed to have Matt on the show originally. So he's going to join us, as I said, a little bit after 11:30. And if you've never watched curling at a professional level before, I really encourage you to check it out. And don't forget, he could be representing Canada at the Worlds when it comes to TD Place Arena, April 1st to 9th. So that's going to be incredibly exciting for the city because, as I said, this is the men's world championships coming to Ottawa. And this particular Brier, you're going to get the Canadian champion out of that. So we'll talk to Matt Dunstone, talk about, their success so far, how the season's going in general. And for those of you that are new to the sport of curling, we'll sort of break it down for you, and maybe Matt can tell us, if you're new to the sport, what you should be looking for as you continue to watch the Tim Hortons Brier. Also on the show, Rachel Wilson, CEO of the Ottawa Food Bank, joining us. Food inflation, we continue to talk about it. You've probably heard the ads here, even on City News, with the 6% beer tax that's coming. I know that a lot of people during the talkback hour had some thoughts on that and not too happy about raising the price of beer here in Canada by 6%. So food inflation is happening across the board. Fuel costs have gone up. I don't know if you've seen the price of gas recently. So we'll talk to Rachel from the Ottawa Food Bank about things such as, how food inflation is affecting the food bank, other costs that are rising for them. Are they other challenges for them? I know more people are accessing the food bank, so we'll get some numbers. And then for the first time in 4 years, they have their Food Sort Challenge. Their food sort challenge is back. We'll tell you how you can get involved in that. And, of course, there's always volunteer opportunities there. We'll talk a little bit about that with Rachel as well. And the Jazz Fest announced their lineup yesterday, so we're going to get a full breakdown of the lineup. The programming manager, Peter Kankura, will be joining us on the show. I know that it's interesting because they still have 2 headline acts to fill. So they have 2 remaining spots there, but we'll give you a breakdown because there is some incredible talent coming to the Jazz Festival again this year. Not sponsored this year, by the way, by TD. So we'll talk to Peter about that to find out, what that means to the Jazz Festival in general. But coming up after the break, with pandemic-era temporary shelters still operating in Ottawa community centres, the city is looking to transition away from their use and find more permanent housing for vulnerable people. We'll be discussing that with City Councillor Marty Carr after the break. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
My name is Joel Tamas. This is Red Heaven, and we are going to be playing the encore concert here in Ottawa. I got goosebumps just looking at the lighting and the sound, and it's very exciting to show up at a place like Shankman.
It was our 35th anniversary. To celebrate, we were on our way to Mama Rosie's, where we had our first date. That's when we heard coming from the radio. So we stopped and listened. It helped us get to safety. So when I think of our anniversary, because now we have even more to celebrate.
Long way from Nashville and Mama, I'll tell you that. Performed from Montreal to Boston to Los Angeles. But Toronto, that's my chosen home. Sure, when I'm walking down Yonge Street, I see some funny people who have the nerve to point the finger at me. And grin and smile and whisper. My song was #2 on local radio. It sold 10,000 in Toronto alone. Turned down Ed Sullivan because they asked me to remove my makeup. Wouldn't do American Bandstand because of their segregation policies. I was just being me, never tried to explain myself to anyone. And besides, none of that to worry, Jackie, because I know I look good. Got a new way of loving, baby. Thought I want to teach it to you.
Jackie Shane was a pioneer transgender soul singer, a central figure in the Toronto R&B scene. She helped shape what we know as the Toronto sound.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Sam. Thanks so much for spending some of your day with us. Always appreciate it. As I mentioned just before the break, with pandemic-era temporary shelters still operating in Ottawa community centres, the city is looking to transition away from their use and find more permanent housing for vulnerable people. Amid an increase in homelessness and sparse availability of affordable housing, some councillors are concerned about what could happen when the additional shelter space closes. Here to talk more about this, we are joined by City Councillor Marty Carr. Good morning, Marty.
Good morning, Derek. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks so much for spending time with us. Really appreciate it. Let's just discuss, first of all, as I said, some councillors being concerned. I imagine you're one of those councillors. Talk about, what this decision means to those vulnerable in our community.
You're speaking in terms of the individuals who are currently being housed in the community center.
That's correct.
What that means for them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that we're housing those vulnerable residents. Ottawa's done a great job. When the pandemic started, they repurposed community centers, which at the time were not being used for programming. If you remember, everything was shut down. Seems like a long time ago now, but it was only 3 years ago. And, to make sure that we didn't end up with overcrowded shelters or people having to sleep on the street. So unfortunately, though, this has continued for 3 years, where I've had one community center occupied for 3 years now, and another which has been used on and off, and now it's being used again. And so the programming has never come back. So I think, the concern is we've gotten ourselves into a situation where we have one vulnerable population seeking shelter, and then we have vulnerable residents. Both of those community centers in my ward are located in areas, one's right next to Herongate, and the other is on Russell Road, where there's a lot of OCH properties where we had programming from Christie Lake Kids. So I think the concern is finding that balance, making sure that we get those folks in more permanent housing so that we also have the recreational facilities available.
Yeah, and how do we do that quickly, Marty? That's the big issue.
Yeah, so obviously, I'm not a counselor that's going to advocate for moving people out of this situation until we have a more permanent solution.
Right.
So, we're at a great time right now. The federal government just announced the third round of the Rapid Housing Initiative. So typically, the funding, there's been two other rounds where they've been provided to, I think, some Ottawa community housing project developments that are underway. But the city has an opportunity here to look at what they can use that money for in terms of hotels or motels or other buildings that can rapidly house these people. And in some cases, these people have been returned to regular housing. There's been over 200 of them housed that were using the community centers that the city has managed to get into housing. Other folks need supportive housing where they need to live with some wraparound supports. And so that's what we're pushing the city to do, is use some of that funding to invest in supportive housing units, whether it's hotels, motels, or other institutions that can be used.
Marty, the greater issue here, too, is why people find themselves in this situation. And you said it well, the supportive housing is absolutely key. How do we allocate more funds, to help people with mental health issues and substance use issues? I know that, there's been talk and you've gone through the budget so far. Are you happy with the amount of money that is being put forward to tackle those important issues?
So, there's never enough money being invested in social services. Absolutely not. That budget that we just passed, normally you would start, we're going to start working on next year's budget right now. That was kind of out of cycle in terms of the fact that the city's on a calendar year. We already started in January. We just approved the budget. So you had a brand new council.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure there's more money for social services. I think we managed to increase the capital budget on affordable housing. We managed to get a fund started for environmental initiatives. We're going to be looking for funding for social services. And I'm actually the third member of the Program and Service Review Committee with the mayor and Councillor Curry.
Yeah.
I'm actually the third person. And part of my motivation to agreeing to be on that committee was to make sure that we're seeking opportunities to find funds that can be reinvested in social services for the next budget cycle. Because absolutely, we're at a crisis time.
Right. What are you hearing from your constituents, Marty? With this particular topic, are people reaching out to you? Are they concerned? Are they seeing more, homelessness in your community and in and around, and it's causing concern?
Well, I think most people I'm hearing from are there's people that are happy that we're finding a solution to permanently house people, that the recreational facilities will come back. Overall, there's an awareness generally by all my residents that we do need to invest more in the social services sector, that we're facing an unprecedented crisis in terms of mental health, in terms of people, affordability. Like, we have an affordability crisis. We've got more and more people accessing food banks. Inflation is super high. People are being challenged. So generally, everything I've heard from the residents is very supportive.
What else is top of mind for you at this time, Marty? I mean, you've been a counselor now for 4 months in. What else are you hearing in particular from Alta Vista Ward residents?
Well, in Alta Vista, we always hear about the conditions of the roads, of the fact that we're 1950s, 1960s infrastructure, speeding, traffic. All of those things are sort of par for the course, especially in a sort of we were sort of the initial suburb, right? And now we're kind of the core. So we need to keep pace with those sort of things. Hear a lot about transit and how we need to improve that. Of course, I'm not on an LRT line, but we do hear a lot about affordability, things being expensive, and worried about our neighbors. Also, seniors issues are really coming up as well. People choosing to age in place and wanting to make sure that sort of social inclusion, and that's why getting those community centers back is an important first step. Like at Heron Road, we had the Heron Road Senior Center there, and the programming's been moved into another community for 2 months. So.
Right. You mentioned speeding. That's been always a hot topic. I know that you heard that during the campaigning as well, that people were concerned. We're seeing some more photo radar, right, being put into different communities and in school zones. Is that coming to your ward as well?
Yeah, I've got a new camera coming. I'm going to get the location wrong up on Heron Road.
Okay.
We have a couple already. I get probably 75% in favor of these these cameras, and I get about 25%, maybe less, of people who don't think they should be there. But by and large, people are more and more concerned with street safety, speeding, lowering of speed limits, traffic calming measures. It's a big thing, especially in my neighborhoods of Elmdale and Canterbury. I hear the most from them with cut through traffic coming off the major streets. So it's always a hot topic here.
Yeah, always remains a concern in almost any community. When I talk to any counselor, as you said, the speeding issue, and of course, just the basics, right? I mean, that's always of top of mind. But I'm glad we had an opportunity to talk about, the homeless crisis and, the issues with these centers, sort of wrapping up and where we're going to find more permanent housing for vulnerable people. I know you're busy, Marty, so we appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you as well. That is Marty Carr, councillor for Alta Vista Ward. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
On the next episode of Simply Cooking by Chef, as Canadians, we love our chips. Join us as we put an Italian twist on a crowd favorite, burgers and fries.
Your City News forecast for today could be a windfall of cash. With our weather guarantee, if we're off by 3 degrees, you could win. Enter at ottawa.citynews.ca. And if you hear your name on Wake Up with Rob Snow at 7:21 a.m., call in to claim your cash.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, my life changed forever. During the pandemic, all of our lives changed, and many of us turned to alcohol and drugs to cope. As life returns to normal, the increase in substance use from COVID has lingered, and some police services report an increase in impaired driving that caused heartbreak and devastation. Now, more than ever, we need your commitment to never drive impaired, and to encourage all of your family and friends to do the same. Together, we can save lives.
At Celebrate Ottawa, we love showing you something a little different. We showcase remarkable people highlighting the city's diversity in arts, culture, sports, and nature. We will show you features that prove Ottawa is a vibrant and exciting city. We'll entertain you and we'll even teach you new things. Join me, your host, Lila Grine, as we explore and celebrate Ottawa.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Here comes the 67. He scores! That for your first of the season.
Another highlight reel goal.
Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play!
67's action on Rogers TV.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 10th. Good morning. I am Damilola Onime. Right now in Ottawa, -4. In Smiths Falls, it is -3. And here's what's making news this hour. The Canadian economy added 22,000 jobs last month, far fewer than the 150,000 jobs created in January. The jobless rate held steady at a near record low of 5%. And StatsCan says is also reporting the gap between wage growth and inflation is narrowing, with average hourly wages up 5.4% on a year-over-year basis in February, and inflation running at 5.9% in January. The Bank of Canada expects the labour market to ease in the coming months as higher interest rates slow spending by people and businesses. And Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino is launching public consultations on a foreign influence transparency registry, like those operating in the U.S. and in Australia. People who act on behalf of a foreign state to advance its goals would have to register and disclose their ties to the government employing them, making their dealings more transparent. The Liberals are under pressure to take action after weeks of allegations that they did not act when warned that China was trying to interfere in the last 2 federal elections. And the city is putting plans in place to deal with any spring flooding, flood control on the Rideau River. Along with the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority say it is monitoring the ice conditions on the waterway. They have carried out controlled ice blastings between the Minto and Sussex bridges. Both the Mississippi and Carp watershed have an above average snowpack this year. While that doesn't mean flooding, it is an imminent warning sign. The city is promising regular updates to council and also on the city's website. City News time is 10:32. I am Damilola Onime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Tarek Fage here, host of Daytime Ottawa on Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. Sam is off today and off next week. She's taking some much-deserved vacation time, spending time with her mom and her daughter. So I'll be in all next week as well. This is a great topic to discuss because it's something we haven't discussed much here on the show in the past, and that is the effect of the war in Ukraine on children. And joining us to talk more about that is international affairs columnist with the Kingston Whig Standard is Jeffrey Johnston. Jeffrey, welcome to the show. Great to have you back again.
Good morning, Derek. Great to be with you.
Good morning, Jeffrey. Before we get to your latest article, which, by the way, is an excellent article, I encourage everybody to have a look. Let's talk about the latest on Russia's war in Ukraine, and that's that massive missile attack. Jeffrey, what have you heard about that attack? I understand 6 civilians have died, if not more. What have you heard so far?
It was 2 nights ago, the Russians launched this massive missile and artillery barrage. And the Russians, in that barrage, used a variety of different missiles. This terrifying weapon they have, these hypersonic missiles that go many times the speed of sound. These are really high-tech, expensive weapons, and they use these against Ukrainian civilian populations. Not really sure what that means. maybe it could mean that they're trying to, terrorize the Ukrainian population, because there's no way to shoot these hypersonic missiles down because they are so fast.
Yeah, you can't detect them, can you, in time, is my understanding.
Even if they were launched against an American site, the Americans might have a difficulty shooting them down, even with their really, sophisticated air defenses. They were also using cruise missiles, and then they were using, less sophisticated missiles. It could be that their stock of missiles are dwindling, and that's why they're using their these hypersonic missiles, or maybe it's just because Russia has become a terrorist state, because whenever you attack civilian infrastructure, deliberately targeted that's actually a war crime. We know that people were wounded in Kyiv. We know that I think about 6 people were killed in Lviv. Lviv is in western Ukraine, and that has been somewhat of a refuge for Ukrainians escaping the fighting in the north and the east. Right. We know people were wounded in Kharkiv, which has suffered terribly during this. The Russians knocked out the electrical grid for a while. We know that at one point, at least 40% of the residents in Kyiv were without heat. That's very serious in Ukraine, because March is a cold month, just as it's a cold month here. We also know that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was affected by all this, and they were disconnected from the grid. They had to use diesel generators to keep the thing going. President Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, basically said that this is a terrible nuclear incident. Yeah. If this continues, there could be a problem with the nuclear power plant, which would affect the rest of Europe. So the Russians are again committing a war crime by attacking the power grid and by causing incidents at the nuclear power plant. We know in Kherson, which has also suffered terribly in the war, at least 4 people were killed in an artillery strike that hit a bus stop. Again, that's a war crime when you're deliberately targeting civilian areas, or areas civilians are going to be. Mm-hmm. These have no military value whatsoever. And so in the fullness of time, when the war eventually ends, and that there are prosecutions at the International Criminal Court or special tribunals set up, the Russians are going to have to be held to account for these kinds of attacks. And of course, during all of this, people have to go into the air raid shelters and into bunkers and church basements. That's right. And as I write about in my article, this is where children end up by going, and this causes terrible emotional and psychological trauma for all of these children who are living under the gun.
Yeah, and you cite a report from Save the Children on the heavy toll that children are under. Tell me a little bit about what you got from that report, Jeffrey.
I actually spoke to one of the main contributors to the report, and I'm not really good at pronouncing her name, Katerina Litvinenko, and she is Ukrainian, and she is one of the managers of Save the Children Ukraine, which is a non-governmental organization that operates actually around the world. Save the Children operates around the world, and it's for child welfare. And I interviewed her at 9 a.m., Ukraine time. That would be about 1 a.m. our time, and I wanted to, get her at that time because it's the beginning of the day, and these workers are very busy, and you don't want to be disrupting their work. But when I spoke with her, the air raid sirens were sounding in Kyiv, and she could not go to work because when the air raid sirens sound, you're supposed to shelter in place or get to the shelters, the underground shelters, if you can. She was trapped in her apartment building. She could not go outside. She could not go to work. Very calm, cool, and collected, though. And I said to her during the interview, at any time, if you're in danger and you have to get into your bathtub, then do that. And she said to me, actually, she was in the bathroom during the interview because they teach them that is the safest room in, your house or your apartment building, because you've got all these weight-bearing walls. You also have a stainless steel tub that you can get into if there is a strike on the building. I thought it was a terrifying situation, but she remained really calm, collected. And she remembered, everything about the report. We talked about the report. So, for example, children in Ukraine are spending, throughout the war, have spent so far at least 920 hours in bunkers or basements. And, as I say, every time a siren goes, you've got to go into the shelters. By the way, there's the Canadian branch of the Catholic Near East Welfare Association, which is, a religious humanitarian organization that helps people around the world. They are helping to renovate and contribute to making the church basements in Kyiv and other places stronger and safer for air raid shelters, particularly for women and children. So that's really important. But nevertheless, these places are not great places for kids because they're damp and they're cold, and that affects their bodies. It causes backaches, leg aches. They're also missing out on a lot of socialization because schools are being destroyed. Save the Children figures that many Ukrainian children have actually lost years of development because, the key years in childhood development are, from age 0 to 5, and then other kids miss a lot because they're not getting their peer bonding at school. There's also the problem that 30% of children in Ukraine don't have access to a tablet, computer, or a device, so that makes online learning impossible. And then the Russians are attacking the electrical grid, which further complicates any attempts at online learning. We also know that at least 460 children have been killed, but that's a gross undercount. Because they just can't get in there to check out the fighting in the forward areas.
Well, and my understanding as well, Jeffrey, that there's alleged reports as well that Ukrainian children are even suffering and are victims of things like sexual violence. You mentioned the deaths, but there's torture and other degrading treatment. You talk about that in the article. Can you expand on that?
Yes. So the United Nations has human rights monitors in Ukraine, and they are investigating these reports. And I found that really disturbing when I read that in the report. So, yes, there's torture, and there's sexual violence, and the killing of children. And unfortunately, it's hard for these investigators to get to the front lines. And I asked Save the Children, can you elaborate on this? Can you confirm this? And some of the cases have been confirmed, but some of them, as I say, it's too difficult because they cannot put human rights monitors into forward areas where there is heavy fighting, and they cannot go into Russian-controlled areas. And these atrocities, grave violations against the rights of children, are happening in Russian-controlled areas. So we all know this. When the Russians were driven out of Bucha, which is a suburb of Kyiv, they found all those civilian bodies and torture chambers. Well, there are all these occupied areas within Ukraine, and the Russians are doing terrible things there. And so we can only imagine what's happening. And when Ukraine, in the fullness of time, is fully liberated, we're going to have to send in investigators and investigate all these crimes against children. And this is one of the things that Save the Children really stresses, because in war, too often crimes against children are overlooked. And Save the Children wants, when there are trials at the ICC or special tribunals, they want the community of nations to speak for children, to put children first when it comes to all of this, and that make sure that those who are responsible for these grave violations against children are held to account.
Yeah, well, that's the issue, right? How can they be held to account? I mean, you said earlier, and I think everybody, most people would agree that they're responsible for violations of international law and international human rights laws, right? But can you hold them to account? How would you go about doing that?
Yeah.
It's almost impossible.
There was an unfortunate development this week. So the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, said that the Pentagon will not release information on Russian war crimes to the ICC. The United States is not a party to the International Criminal Court, and there is fear that if the Americans do that, it will set a precedent and it could be used against American soldiers. So that's very disappointing. Now, Canada is a party to the ICC. We're one of the original signatories to the Statute of Rome, which created the International Criminal Court. There could be tribunals set up, special tribunals set up, and at one point they could go after the commanders and the soldiers on the field. There could be trials. The Ukrainians, are capturing Russian soldiers. There could be investigations against the captured soldiers, and they could be put on trial for these crimes. They could get evidence from those soldiers and use them against the higher-ups. If these generals, in the fullness of time, try to travel to other parts of the world, they go to the European Union, come to North America, or to any place in South America or Africa that has extradition treaties, they could be arrested. But you're right, it will be difficult to get our hands on Vladimir Putin and his top people. There's one other issue I really wanted to mention.
Sure.
Mines. Ukraine has been heavily mined by the Russians, and there are lots of unexploded ordnance. And Save the Children is worried that 2 million children are at risk of being killed or maimed by landmines or unexploded ordnance. So earlier this week, actually in Kingston, Ontario, Prime Minister Trudeau welcomed the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Right. And during that meeting, Prime Minister Trudeau committed an additional $3 million of Canadian funds to help demine Ukraine. This is on top of the $32 million that Canada has already pledged or given to Ukraine. So it's really important. But Save the Children was telling me that it will take decades, Derek, to demine Ukraine. And what happens is, in the fullness of time, the grass grows, shrubs grow, and you can't see these things anywhere. And then you'll have a kid going out and playing, or they'll build a soccer field or something like that. And at some point, the unexploded ordnance, could go off, could be triggered, and a child could lose a foot or a leg or die. So it's really important for us to keep our eye on the ball, because this is something that's going to have to, be taken care of for, years to come.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Jeffrey, always appreciate your insight. Thank you so much again for joining us today.
Thank you, Derek.
That's Jeffrey Johnston, international affairs columnist with the Kingston Whig Standard. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Hey, I'm Ash Ravens. I'm a singer-songwriter in Ottawa, Canada. I'm performing this week on Encore Ottawa 3, so please be sure to tune in and hope you enjoy it.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll introduce you to the Canto Sentimentos String Quartet. They have an upcoming performance, so we'll get all the details on that and, of course, talk about their history. We'll also talk to the Workers' History Museum, and we'll introduce you to two fabulous entrepreneurs. One has been in business for 20 years, and one just starting out. All that and more on Friday's Daytime, and you can only watch it right here on Rogers TV.
Hey everybody, my name is Karen. I'm here with my best friends Shane and Monique.
Join us on Rogers TV for Fitness Faction. Every week, we're going to take you through a full body workout. We've got strength training, we've got cardio, we've got HIIT. Ladies, let's get back into it.
I think we've got 10 more skaters. Let's go.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. Sam off today, also off next week. This is a topic that many people brought up during the pandemic, and people spending more time together, people in isolation, people are working from home, students were off school and working online, and parents were juggling, and there's a lot of, it's stressful enough to be a parent. And then you add on a global pandemic and children working at home and online and, having to juggle all of these things. And what has that meant for relationships? What has that meant perhaps for the divorce rate? Well, here to talk about that, among other subjects, I'm joined by Rebecca Bromwich, adjunct professor, law and legal studies at Carleton University. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's great to have you. And can we talk some numbers here? Do we have numbers yet, during sort of the early stages of the pandemic? How has this affected relationships and the divorce rate?
Well, some statistics are available and some are not. And there is one that is kind of misleading. There is an apparent dip in the divorce rate in the early days of COVID, so 2020, 2021. Okay. But the courts were closed.
Oh, yes.
Fact, the contrary is in fact the case. If you talk anecdotally to family law lawyers, people who deal with divorce in any professional capacity, whether they're mediators, family law lawyers, and they saw a massive boom in separation and divorce. And if you talk to your friends, most of us can independently verify that from our own personal experience. So those numbers are going to come up. There was a very big delay in the formal filing of divorces, but that is now, we'll see, I predict, and I will go on record predicting this, 2023, 2024, we're going to see the formalization of those divorces as a divorce boom. There certainly was a massive increase in separations. There was also, very unfortunately, an increase in the levels of domestic violence in the context of COVID and the lockdowns.
Rebecca, when it comes to divorce, and just family and divorce law, has there been many changes over the last decade?
Well, there has been a significant change to the Divorce Act that makes it presumptively the case that there is shared parenting. Right. And that took effect 2019-2020, so just prior to COVID. The notion that we don't talk about custody anymore, at least when we're talking about federal divorces, and that has been the case in several provincial jurisdictions. So it's federal when it's divorce, when child custody is ancillary to a legal divorce, but a lot of times you're dealing with provincial and territorial legislation when you're dealing with separations that are, people separated don't necessarily divorce. And so there's been a massive shift from sole custody being the norm. So when I started practicing law in 2023, it was around the 85% of cases that there was sole custody allocated to the mother after the breakdown of a marriage or relationship. And that has radically shifted such that in the majority of cases now, most children are in some kind of shared parenting capacity where they spend time with each parent at each house. And our whole notion and the way we talk about it has shifted such that kids are now dividing their time between households.
Is there a challenge in negotiating that shared custody, or is it pretty clear cut?
So I learned this when I was doing a project that was funded by the Law Foundation of Ontario in 2017-2018, did some interviews with a variety of people who were experiencing shared parenting circumstances, whether they're mothers or fathers after a divorce or separation. And a fun fact I learned was that the vast majority of them were in contact with their former partners at least once a day. So it really shifts the notion of that sort of binary between being together and being apart, and that ongoing relational dimension of still having to co-parent together and having to communicate about things like, did my child bring their indoor shoes to school? And then that becomes a conversation that people have to have with one another. And of course, when there's acrimony, when there is conflict, that can be really problematic. And so what I was studying at that time was were electronic apps and other types of resources that people could use to buffer that communication, to facilitate and optimize communicating specifically about what the kids needed.
Right. Well, when I have, these discussions, with somebody that, doesn't practice law like yourself, what often comes up is some confusion, Rebecca, between child support and spousal support. And that I have you here just because I've had those discussions before, because my understanding is, child support is kind of non-negotiable. There's a calculation involved, whereas spousal support is sort of negotiable, and that can be a moving target. Can you just clarify that?
Well, essentially that is true. So there are two different types of support. The thing is, a lot of people have the wrong idea based on historical ideas, because family law has changed over time, and also in other jurisdictions, particularly American jurisdictions. And we learn so much about law from American jurisdictions, so we learn the wrong things in Canada a lot of the time. So as you say, it's quite correct that child support is simply a table amount. You can Google it, child support guidelines calculator Ontario. Make sure you put in Ontario, and you'll get the number and it's based entirely on the income of the payor spouse. And if there's a shared parenting arrangement, there can be set off. So it's a very simple calculation. That's the baseline amount. And then there's also, in addition to that, what are called special and extraordinary expenses under the child support guidelines, things like child care expenses, things like sports. If your kid's in hockey, that can run you. My son played hockey for a number of years. My daughters do competitive sports. Those things cost money, and there can be agreements around that. But the baseline support is simply based on that guideline amount, and it's set forth in a table, and you really can't get around it. Judges will actually scrutinize divorce applications to make sure children are properly provided for, and if child support obligation is not put forward in a divorce, they'll actually send it back. They won't let the divorce go forward. So, there's no fault divorce in Canada, but it is scrutinized for the provision of the well-being of children, and so you really can't get around child support obligations, nor should anyone, frankly.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I'm glad it has sort of that standard in place. Very quickly, before I run out of time, spousal support, how is that decided upon?
Spousal support is more negotiable. People are allowed to negotiate around that. There are spousal support advisory guidelines, and it used to be there was this point prior to 1990, this idea that there wouldn't be ongoing spousal support obligations. That is no longer the case. There is a recognition that people's lives are fundamentally affected. Marriage is serious. And the consequences are serious. And frankly, unfortunately, this is all coming on the heels of International Women's Day, often, unfortunately, to the detriment of women who put their careers, historically, stereotypically, and still today, put their careers to the side to support the career of the male partner. This still happens. And the spouse who has suffered detriment by reason of the marriage or its breakdown or the relationship or its breakdown, so they don't have to be legally married, is entitled to spousal support. But there is more basis for some communication around that, some negotiation around that. And just another fun fact, just with respect to International Women's Day, the vast majority of divorces are actually initiated by women. So even though women are often the recipients of spousal support, they've suffered detriment in relation to the marriage, it is still the case that the vast majority of divorces are initiated by women, over 50% in general. And when you get to educated women, it's over 80%. So it's a sobering thought that, I mean, you can't fix stupid, but you can give it a court date. And when people enter into marriage, they should be really thinking about egalitarian relationships and not exploiting each other. If I can put that in a little morality play here. You know, if you mess around, eventually you find out.
Yeah. Rebecca, really appreciate the time today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, thanks for having me.
All right, take care. That's Rebecca Bromwich, Adjunct Professor of Law and Legal Studies at Carleton University. We're going to take a break. We've got your news coming up. This is Derek Fage filling in for Sam Laprade. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
This is Meg from Fit Over 50. On our next episode, we're going to be doing a full body workout using resistance bands. You can find bands at any local sporting goods store. So go get yours and hope to see you then.
Everybody knows not to drink and drive, but some people still think it's okay to take drugs and drive. Police have the authority, the ability, and the tools to determine if drivers are impaired by legal or illegal drugs. And because drug-impaired drivers can pose just as great a risk as drunk drivers, they face the same penalties, like the loss of their driver's license, a criminal record, fines, and more. A message from the RCMP, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
Hi, I'm Meg from AIM Fitness, and I'm here with my buddy Fit Finley. Join us every week for Fit Over 50. We'll take you through some low-impact and high-intensity workouts designed to improve your strength and your balance. All you'll need is a resistance band, some light hand weights, and also your water bottle and a sturdy chair. Tune in right here on Rogers TV and let us be part of your weekly routine.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support.
Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 101.1 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 10th. Good morning. I am Damilola Onime. Right now in Ottawa, -4. In Smiths Falls, it is -3. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The Trudeau government is withholding tens of millions of dollars in healthcare funding for provinces as it wants them to stop charging patients cash for medically necessary services. City News parliamentary reporter Cormac McSweeney has more.
The federal health minister has written a letter to provinces urging them to stop the practice of doctors charging patients for services that should be covered by public health insurance. At the same time, it's being announced that the feds are clawing back $82 million in health transfers to 8 provinces due to the fact that they've improperly forced patients to pay out of pocket, mainly for fees for diagnostic services such as MRIs and CT scans. But Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos says concerns are being raised about more fees for patients, particularly around virtual health care and other changes that were forced on by the pandemic.
So working together, I believe we can all better address those challenges and ensure that in Canada for the years to come, despite the changes that we'll see in technology and delivery of healthcare, we will make sure that Canadians get access to free medically necessary healthcare services.
The Canada Health Act allows the federal government to reduce transfers when provinces charge user fees for medically necessary services. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
Mostly cloudy today, a guaranteed high of +1. We're down to -5 overnight. Quiet weather for the weekend as we spring forward, but feeling very much like winter for Monday, Tuesday. Measurable snow both days and temperatures below seasonal. The guaranteed high today, -1.
City News time is 11:03. Canada's latest job numbers are out. City News reporter Irene Precklett has more.
The Canadian economy added 22,000 jobs last month, while that number was far fewer than the 150,000 created in January. That January number was well above expectations. The jobless rate holding steady at a near record low of 5%. Provincially, Newfoundland has the highest unemployment rate, Quebec the lowest. Statistics Canada is also reporting the gap between wage growth and inflation is narrowing, with average hourly wages up 5.4% on a year-over-year basis in February, and inflation running at 5.9% in January. At the Business Centre, I'm Irene Precklett.
I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Sam is off today and next week. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV filling in for Sam. This is a story that caught my attention yesterday, and we wanted to talk about it on today's show. This story that the RCMP are investigating 2 alleged covert police stations in Quebec that it believes are working on behalf of the Chinese government. They've confirmed that the 2 locations under investigation are one in Montreal's Chinatown and then one in the municipality of Brossard on the South Shore. Both centers have served as resource centers for Chinese and Asian communities. But the RCMP saying, a spokesperson for the RCMP said investigators are taking steps to detect and disrupt these criminal activities supported by a foreign state that could also threaten the safety of people in Canada. They go on to say the RCMP recognizes that Canadians of Chinese origin are victims of alleged activities conducted by these centers. And to get more of an understanding of exactly what these police stations have been doing and why we should be concerned. We are again joined by Associate Professor of Criminology at the University of Ottawa, Michael Kempa. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning.
Michael, have we seen this sort of situation here in Canada in the past? Is this new, or is this something we've seen before?
Well, this is one more organized expression of something that's been going on for a long time, which is the government of the People's Republic of China never fully considers that their diaspora, Chinese people who have left or are now naturalized Canadian citizens, are ever beyond their reach. So it's alleged that these police stations, so-called, are set up with a view to pressuring people, Chinese Canadians, to returning to China in some cases to face persecution. And they often are pressured in such way by threats being applied to family and friends that may be back in mainland China or elsewhere through the Chinese Republic.
I mean, and I find it interesting that they're calling them police stations. I mean, why would they be using that kind of language?
Well, the Chinese government is not calling them police stations. They're calling them administrative centers.
Yeah.
We are calling them police stations on the basis that it's alleged that the people working there are functioning as police agents for the Chinese government, where they are working through the community, finding people who have either spoken out against Chinese policies, whether we're talking about the rights of democracy in Hong Kong, questions on the sovereignty of Taiwan, the genocide of the Uyghur population in the northwest of China. People who have spoken out can face legal consequences in mainland China, and this is part of a network of international Chinese police on behalf of the Chinese government to bring citizens of other countries back to China.
Could it also act as a place where they could convince, I don't know, perhaps people of Chinese origin to act on their behalf in Canada in some way?
Yes, it's a place basically to lean on people, either to stop them from speaking out against the PRC's policies, or perhaps to act at their behest, again under threat. So this is where we start getting into questions of potential centers for exerting influence on political processes in Canada, for example, influencing party nomination processes. If you've got agents working through those stations, it could be from there that they are leaning on people in the community to vote one way or another on threat that there could be consequences for ignoring their requests.
How do you see the RCMP's investigation moving forward? Will they start, I guess, will they have access to their database and start investigating individuals? How would that investigation look?
It's going to be an international cooperation investigation, because Canada's not the only place where these centers have been set up. It goes into the UK, the United States, elsewhere through the Western democracies, Australia. So we're going to need to link up with federal police services throughout that sort of Commonwealth experience and really try to pinpoint what is the funding network for this, how is it organized, are they sharing information. It's quite a little bit more complicated. We also have to understand how these police stations fit in with the broader strategy of the Chinese government to infiltrate political processes, universities, media, and so forth. It's part of a bigger strategy.
What will this mean for, I mean, the individuals that have gone through? Like, I wonder, are they now in danger?
You mean those who have been in some way?
Those who've been intimidated and, you know, perhaps asked to do something on behalf of the Chinese government. Have been trying to, of course, to get them back to China to face trial. How concerned are each of these individuals going to be?
Well, I would say police involvement now, RCMP investigations and whatnot, any light that we're shining on this slows down the activity of these stations and the broader strategy of the PRC government.
Right.
So it's a good thing. And now that we've got public attention on something that's been going on for a very long time, in other words, we're now shining a light on it, we all have a role to play in monitoring these processes and making sure that we don't have activity like this in our neighborhoods, that we don't have neighbors who are being harassed, that we don't have political processes that are being corrupted. In a sense, it's almost overdue that we've had a little bit of a crisis here because we're finally paying attention.
As far as the reaction from China, we've seen some reaction. I mean, I guess it's expected. Michael, do you see them doing anything but, of course, denying this kind of situation is happening?
Well, no.
Yeah.
They would say nothing other, including an interference in our elections. They say, well, we have no ambition to interfere in the Canadian political process. Well, we know that not to be true based on decades of intelligence. Many states seek to impact the political outcomes in other countries, and the PRC, People's Republic of China, is just about the most organized in that respect.
By the way, everybody, we're speaking to Michael Kempa, Associate Professor of Criminology at the University of Ottawa. You mentioned universities, Michael. From your research and experience, what have we seen happening over the years at universities?
Well, at universities and elsewhere, business and politics, the way the PRC typically works is they offer wonderful deals, offers of funding, donations, exchange opportunities, and so forth with either scholars or business persons or politicians in the Western democracies, including Canada. And it's the old axiom, if a deal is too good to be true, it probably is.
Right.
So if there are millions of dollars being offered for scholarships and funding, and it's ostensibly to encourage the exchange of ideas with Chinese universities in mainland China, you can expect that there's no free money. This is where we start seeing issues of people being corrupted, pulled into their process, or otherwise used as, in a sense, useful idiots who discount the true nature of Chinese infiltration into Canadian society, or who over time are actually becoming dependent on these sources of funding and, in a sense, apologists for aggressive PRC policies.
Michael, I guess we should be very careful with, to give an understanding to listeners that the people we're talking about here are victims, really, right?
Well, that is exactly the case. The Chinese diaspora, the people who have left China who are now either naturalized Canadian citizens or who are here as permanent residents on student and working visas, there's different sort of levels to diaspora. Very often, these are the people who are being leaned on by the PRC, the People's Republic of China, which is the best acronym, really, when you're referring to the government of China, the Communist government of China. So it's important to say PRC, that is their activities, and the PRC victimizes its own diaspora.
Michael, I'm so glad. I know we reached out to you at the last minute because this, as I said, came to my attention sort of late yesterday, and we were trying to figure out who to reach out to, and your name came up right away. So really appreciate you joining us, on short notice again today.
Well, thank you kindly.
Thank you very much, Michael. That's Michael Kempa, Associate Professor of Criminology at the University of Ottawa. Coming up after the break, mentioned a little bit earlier that the Jazz Fest has announced their lineup. Should also tell you that at the end of that, we are going to give away some tickets for you to see Journey. That's right. Journey is on their Freedom Tour 2023 with their very special guest, Toto. They are coming to the Canadian Tire Centre on Monday, March the 13th at 7:30 p.m. So make sure you listen to it. It'll be a great interview because, as I said, there's some amazing headliners, and there's always those hidden gems that come to any festival. So we'll talk about those hidden gems and some of those headliners and give away those tickets coming up after the break. Peter Kankura, the programming manager at the Ottawa Jazz Festival, coming up after this. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
My name is Joel Tamas. This is Red Heaven, and we are going to be playing the Encore concert here in Ottawa. I got goosebumps just looking at the lighting and the sound, and it's very exciting to show up at a place like Shankman.
Hi, I'm Justice.
And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions.
That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support.
Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
At St. John Ambulance, we're all about community. We teach life-saving skills and provide community support through our volunteer services. All St. John Ambulance product sales and training registrations support these important services. Volunteer, donate, or enroll in a program today so we can continue to have an impact on our community. Visit sja.ca to learn more. At St. John Ambulance, we do more than save lives, we change lives.
What do I like? I like open fires, moonlit nights, chatty letters, rainy days. I like daydreaming. I love this colorful little island of ruby, emerald, and sapphire. Yet often my dark moods come. I'm possessed body and soul by this depression. They say women shouldn't write. Some days I almost give up. But I cannot contain my imagination. I made Anne real. I gave her my love of nature, my love of books, and my childhood dreams. My greatest happiness would be to climb the alpine path and write upon it a woman's humble name.
Lucy Maud Montgomery battled depression, rejection, and sexism to become known around the world for Anne of Green Gables and 19 other novels.
on the next episode of Simply Cooking by Chef. As Canadians, we love our chips. Join us as we put an Italian twist on a crowd favorite, burgers and fries.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. Oh my goodness, this always gets me so excited when the lineups come out because festival season will be full in person. Excited to get back. There is nothing better. I cannot say enough. There is nothing better than going to see live music. And again, a reminder, we'll be giving away those Journey and Toto tickets momentarily. But before we get to that, really excited to have our next guest on because they have announced their Jazz Festival lineup. Still a couple of announcements to be made. But in the meantime, Peter Kankura, programming manager at the Jazz Festival, joining us. How are you, Peter?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's great to have you. You guys must be so excited. I was at Jazz Festival last year. First of all, hats off to your team. A great lineup last year, and it looks to be the same this year. But, you know, a big change this year, of course, is not having that major sponsor, Peter. Can you just tell us what transpired there?
Well, it was something we kind of saw coming about a year or so before as TD announced their kind of restructuring their branding. So they did pull out as a title sponsor out of our festival as well as a few other major jazz festivals across Canada. So,
I see.
You know, they're refocusing, and it is what it is. But we've had other sponsors really step up their game, and so everything is looking great.
Excellent
for this year.
Cannot wait. And you've decided to conclude it before Canada Day. Am I right in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why that decision? I think it's fairly obvious to me, but why that decision, Peter?
I mean, the main decision was because of the construction that's going on at Parliament Hill. Those celebrations have moved to Laprade Flats for the time being, which means kind of all the foot traffic that we were used to having around Parliament Hill and Confederation Park and City Hall has moved on westwards. And we've always had our doors open, all free programming. So if that traffic isn't there, it just doesn't make sense to do it until that traffic returns back to Parliament Hill and Confederation Park.
Well, let's talk about some of the headliners. People should be really excited because you've got some incredible talent coming, Peter.
We do. And, you know, I will say something we pride ourselves on is the curation aspect of this festival. It's from the kind of listening experience. We really try not to overlap outdoor music so that you really do get to enjoy every show. And there are several layers for everybody. So if you're interested in seeing smaller acts from all over the world that are top-notch, we have stuff at the Fort Stage and studio of the National Arts Center. But of course, on the main stage, we have some really exciting stuff this year. We have Herbie Hancock and Buddy Guy. I'm kind of talking about them in the same bag because I feel like they're a direct lineage to the history of American rock and roll, jazz, and blues. Like
Agreed.
Both those, you know. Buddy Guy played with Muddy Waters. He inspired Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton, and Herbie Hancock was a part of the famous Miles Davis quintet. So both those are real legends, and they're in great health. Though this is the time to see them
for sure.
You know, and then we have Lord Huron, which has been getting a lot of attention, and tickets are selling fast for that show.
Nice.
We have a beautiful single Melody Gardot who has not been here in ages. Then we also have Snarky Puppy. I teach at Carleton. A lot of my students just jumped right up when I told them Snarky Puppy's coming.
A real cool group, eh?
Yeah,
and a huge group.
Huge group, absolutely. Yeah.
What about sort of some hidden gems, Peter, that you say, you know, hey, maybe you don't recognize the name, but we're really excited about this particular act?
Well, I could talk till the cows come home about those, but I will try to focus on just a few. In the studio, in the National Arts Center studio, which is a 300-seat venue, there's some really beautiful shows, including this woman from Pakistan, Arooj Aftab. She just won a Grammy, and she's the first Pakistan artist to actually win a Grammy. And she is playing with a guitar player who used to play with Tom Waits.
Okay.
And it's as a trio, and that's just going to be beautiful. Also on that stage is John Schofield, who also played in the Miles Davis Group. And then we have the stage called our Late Night series, which follows each headliner, and that has some really beautiful stuff. For example, Simafunk, another Grammy-nominated artist from Havana, and he's got a 9-piece group from Havana, and it's just going to be an absolute party. We have a group from South Korea called the ADG7 on that same stage. The Sun Ra Orchestra from Chicago, which is also this legendary group. And I mean, I could keep going, but it's really worth checking into it. And if you go on our website, take the time to just click on each artist and just read a paragraph or so. There's really depth to everything that we do program.
Yeah, agreed. And still some big lineup names to come, right? As my understanding is you still have a couple of headline spaces open.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens this time of year is a few groups are still working out their routing details. But we decided to go ahead and let everybody in on what we have so far. And
right on.
And we'll announce those last 2 headliner spots soon.
Excellent. Peter, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, take care. That's Peter Kinkura, programming manager at the Ottawa Jazz Festival. And as Peter said, really encourage you to head over to the website, have a look at all of those artists, because, there's going to be some hidden gems. And if you click on them, you may find some, that really stand out and sort of speak to you. Festival passes are already on sale. We're going to take a break. This is Derek Fage filling in the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Your City News forecast for today could be a windfall of cash. With our weather guarantee, if we're off by 3 degrees, you could win. Enter at ottawa.citynews.ca. And if you hear your name on Wake Up with Rob Snow at 7:21 a.m., call in to claim your cash.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
I'm Wendell Clark with a word about winning. We all know it takes a team effort in any sport and with any challenge. You can be a part of the winning team that shuts out impaired driving. Whether you're out on the town or just hanging out with friends, drink responsibly. Always have a plan for a safe ride home for yourself, your family, and your friends. You'll be helping to shut out impaired driving.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Patini, the host of the RTV quiz show, the hottest show on television. It's the hilarious quiz show where you, the viewers, play for valuable non-existent prizes. It's got great trivia, fun facts, and a lot of laughs, all blended together in a perfect cocktail of edutainment. So join us Wednesdays at 7:30 right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
Here comes the 67. How's that for your first of the season?
Another highlight reel goal.
Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play.
67's action on Rogers TV.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
We were born in Canada. We spoke English. On the streets, we weren't welcome. But on the field, we were the Asahi. Vancouver's champions. Everyone cheered for us. Our people had a voice. Then Canada declared war on Japan. They took us from our homes, called us enemies, forced us into camps. But we brought the game with us. Baseball helped get us through the internment.
The Vancouver Asahi were among the 22,000 Japanese Canadians interned during the Second World War. The team never played another game.
My name is Matthew Rutledge. I'm a 60 scoop survivor, born in Red Lake. Was adopted from there to Toronto at the age of 4. A lot of our brothers and sisters, family members got separated from each other. That was the government's goal, to break that connection from brothers and sisters. Basically taking the Indian out of the child. Right now, they're still trying to find themselves. Originally, my birth name is Harvey Halverson. In my high school days, teens, I was trying to fit into society. I knew I was First Nations, but I didn't know who I was inside. I think later in life, I started that journey. I am proud, Anishinaabe man, who I am now. I love life, who I am.
Long way from Nashville and Mama, I tell you that. Performed from Montreal to Boston to Los Angeles. But Toronto, that's my chosen home. Sure, when I'm walking down Yonge Street, I see some funny people who have the nerve to point the finger at me. Grin and smile and whisper. My song was #2 on local radio. Sold 10,000 in Toronto alone. Turned down Ed Sullivan because they asked.
It is Friday, March 10th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, -4, in Smiths Falls, -3, and here's what's making news right now. The federal health minister says the feds are withholding $82 million in health transfers to 8 provinces. This is due to the fact that doctors in these provinces have been charging patients for services that should have been covered by public health insurance. Most of the deductions are related to fees for diagnostic services, such as MRIs and CT scans. The Canada Health Act allows the federal government to reduce health transfers when provinces charge user fees for medically necessary health services. And the health minister has also written to all provinces warning them about the increase we're seeing in patients being charged fees for a variety of services, including virtual visits. In recent months, there have been many alarms raised about the potential creeping of privatization as more offices charge fees for quicker access. And the federal, provincial and territorial justice ministers will meet today to discuss calls to reform the bail system. All 13 premiers, the federal conservatives and some high-ranking police officials want a more restrictive system that would compel people charged with firearm offences to prove why they should not stay behind bars. Federal Justice Minister David Lametti is concerned that more restrictive laws could violate the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and some legal experts say too many people are being put behind bars before trial. City News time is 11:31. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV filling in for Sam. Before we get to our next guest, a congratulations to Angela, who won those Journey tickets, of course, with special guest Toto. Congratulations, Angela. Enjoy that show. Again, the show Monday, March the 13th at the Canadian Tire Centre at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are still available, so you can head over to the Canadian Tire Centre website to get your tickets if you didn't happen to be lucky enough to win like Angela. Enjoy that show, Angela. We turn our attention to food inflation. It's affecting all of us, and in particular, of course, affecting those most vulnerable in our communities, and of course, many of the organizations who help those that are most vulnerable in our city. I am joined by the CEO of the Ottawa Food Bank, Rachel Wilson. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for doing this, Rachel. And, I'm sure everybody at home certainly has an understanding that food inflation is affecting themselves and, of course, organizations like the food bank. But maybe you could just expand on it and tell us a little bit about how it's been affecting you and what you can offer to those in our community.
Sure. So the Ottawa Food Bank is absolutely seeing the effects of inflation, and particularly around the cost of food. And unfortunately, it's really a double-edged sword. We're seeing more people needing to access a food bank because the cost of living here in Ottawa is just becoming unaffordable for most people. But it also means our costs are going up as well. Before the pandemic, we were spending about $1.5 million on food. Now we're spending well over $6 million. And that is because we're seeing more people needing to access food banks, but also because our costs are going up. I was chatting with our operations team today. Some of the numbers they were sharing with me were just astronomical. Eggs going up by 15%, milk going up by 20%. We're seeing chicken going up by almost $2 a kilogram. This really affects our ability to be able to provide that fresh, healthy, nutritious food that the community needs so much.
And Rachel, I imagine it's not just food inflation, right? You must have other costs that are rising, fuel costs. I imagine, utilities and that kind of thing as well, right?
We do. So we have a fleet of trucks that are traveling around the city every single day. We're delivering food to the 112 agencies that we work with. And so you can imagine the cost of gas to be able to run those trucks, to be able to get them across the city and back again. So we're absolutely affected by the cost, and our staff, volunteer staff right across the city are being impacted by the cost of inflation as well.
You mentioned volunteers, and I know that they're so important to the Ottawa Food Bank. Still opportunities available, Rachel?
There are. Volunteers are such a critical part of our workforce. We have about 3,000 volunteers that help us every year. And during COVID, we saw what happens when we don't have volunteers to support us. It becomes very challenging. So sorting in our warehouse, working out at our farm, or helping at events, going onto our website, ottawafoodbank.ca, and checking out volunteer opportunities there is greatly appreciated.
Well, and exciting news as well, Rachel, over at the Ottawa Food Bank. For the first time in 4 years, the Food Sort Challenge is back, right?
Absolutely. It is an incredible event and a very unique event. You won't find this anywhere else. We get teams together to raise about $1,500 for each team, and then they compete head-to-head, sorting 1,000 pounds of food. It's very competitive, so it's a very exciting time. Teams can still sign up on our website, and the actual date is March 24th, so there's still time to get involved.
What specifically? I know obviously monetary donations are the most important because you can really stretch that dollar further than anyone else because of the partnerships that you have. But other than that, what are you looking for at this time of year, Rachel?
Right now, we are in need of baby formula. We cannot buy baby formula right now. It's just not available to us. And we're seeing dramatic increases for baby formula, even to be able to buy it. So if people are able to donate that is a tremendous help. The other items, of course, are things that you can make a meal. So, healthy staple items like brown rice, pasta sauces, canned meats. Those are really important items for us that if people can donate when they're in a grocery store, that really helps us out.
Rachel, really appreciate your time today. I know how incredibly busy you are at the food bank these days. So thanks so much for joining us today on the show.
Well, thank you so much for helping us share our message.
It's a pleasure. That's Rachel Wilson, CEO of the Ottawa Food Bank. As Rachel said, please visit the website. You can donate right online there. And, of course, you can sign up for the Food Sort Challenge. It is back again this year, and it's a lot of fun, very competitive. A lot of groups have a great time doing that. Well, as I mentioned off the top, I took up the game of curling 5 years ago, and I've become obsessed. I'm curling a minimum of 3 days a week myself during the curling season. Of course, this is the curling season, and the Tim Hortons Brier is going on right now, and I'm going to be a bit of a fanboy here because I am so excited to talk to our next guest. He is known as the Sheriff, Matt Dunstone, the skip of Manitoba, joining us on the show, who hold an 8-0 record at the Brier. Matt, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing great, Matt. And I understand just getting off the ice now for a practice. How are things going with the team? How are you guys feeling?
Yeah, really good. I mean, we've put ourselves in a good position. It's nice to have the bye this afternoon and get a little bit of rest and relaxation. It's a long week, so anytime you get that rest, you want to take it.
Yeah, and Matt, watching you, and as I said, I'm fairly new. I just took up the sport, 5 years ago and have just fallen in love with it. And the way that you and your teammates deliver the rock, I mean, people call it sort of the Manitoba delivery. As a matter of fact, my team on Tuesday nights, we wear the Manitoba hats. Because they're big fans of yours, and I joined the team a couple of years ago. Just tell me about that delivery and how you came to do a delivery that is just so low and so precise, Matt.
Yeah, it's definitely a little unique compared to what you typically see across the board. But, it just comes from, who you grew up watching. I grew up watching Jeff Stoughton and Kerry Burtnick, Vic Peters, and they were all tuck sliders. And, it was just, I want to be like them one of these days. And, that's where you pick it up. You just run with it. My dad was actually a flat foot slider. So he was a little bit, what are you doing? But, I just said, Dad, let me run with it. I love still using the corn broom too. A little bit of old age curling there. So,
yeah.
For the most part, it's just from watching the guys you grew up idolizing.
I love seeing that old corn broom out there. A couple of guys still use that in their delivery. So I was going to ask, what was your start and introduction to curling? So I imagine it was your father, right?
Yeah, totally. It completely runs in my family. Both my grandparents played competitively. They curled mixed together. They actually won the 1980 Mixed Canadians together. So I've watched that VHS tape many, many times. Grew up watching my dad. My dad was competing against, Jeff, Kerry, Vic, back when he played competitively. And my mom coached me throughout my young junior days. So it is very much a family affair and runs deep into our family.
Yeah, and the popularity of the sport is certainly growing. It's been growing exponentially over the last decade, Matt. For those that are sort of, introducing themselves to the sport, not necessarily, playing the sport, but watching the sport, it's great to sort of pick your brain of, what they should be looking for if they're new and they tune in to see some of the Brier. What would you tell them to sort of look for as an introductory?
I would just say, the biggest thing is just figuring out your slide and sort of what's comfortable with you, and then just kind of fine-tuning it from there. As you've seen between my slide and other people's slides, like everybody does it a little bit differently. And, you just got to do what ultimately feels best on your body and then just kind of find tweaks from there. It's very much a feel game, a touch game. And if you're trying to do things that are uncomfortable for your body, that feel, that touch, often leaves you. So I would say that's sort of the biggest thing starting out is just find what's comfortable for you and then tweak it from there.
Matt, let's talk. Mentioned 8-0, of course, to start off, and you guys have put yourself in a great position. What about the rest of the season? How do you guys feel about the rest of the season so far?
Yeah, it's been a really good year. Really consistent. I think we've played 10 events and made 6 finals, I believe. So
yeah.
It's been great. It's been mighty consistent, which is nice. Would have loved to pick up a couple more wins in those finals along the way, obviously. But the more you can put yourself in that sort of position, the better, and the more times you're going to come out on top. And that's something that we've sort of taken into this week. Is we are a new unit, but we've been able to put ourselves in a lot of big games prior to this, and that's something that's definitely helping this group. Because obviously the Brier is the biggest moment up to date to our season. So. There's as the lights get a little bit brighter near the home stretch of this week. We've already put ourselves in a lot of big games, so that's not going to be a hindrance to this team moving forward.
Yeah, for people that aren't familiar with the importance of the Brier itself and what it means to your team, not just a win, and there's obviously prize money involved, but there's more than that, Matt.
Yeah, totally. Trip to the World Championships and a gold for Canada. That's what you dream of as a young curler. Is young male curler in our country it was always about the Brier, right? That's what you grew up watching and idolizing the players in that. And it's the biggest Canadian curling event that there is. And it's just another step forward to try and become world champions, and that's ultimately what this group wants to do.
Curling fans are amazing fans, Matt. What have the fans been like for you guys at the Brier so far?
Yeah, phenomenal. It's been, London's done a great job. The building has been sold. Like the bottom bowl's been pretty much packed the entire week. It's been an awesome atmosphere. We've got a lot of family and friends out here cheering us on, which is always nice to have. And it's just great seeing all the fans of the respective provinces, kind of cheering against each other, and it makes for a really fun atmosphere.
Have you been out? Have you and the boys been out to the patch at all?
We went last night because we knew we had a big break, but we made sure we kept her on the tracks and just limited our time there, obviously, because we still got a lot of work to do, and then hopefully in a couple days from now we can celebrate at the patch there.
Well, and I imagine that's what's amazing about curling as well. I've said this to so many people. Like I'm a huge sports fan across the board. I watch all sports, Matt. But the fact that curlers and the best in the world like yourselves, that you're so approachable, and I guess that must be part of the fabric of curling and something that you're taught and you're proud of.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's really no other sport like that. I mean, we're practicing at curling clubs while recreational leagues are going on, and people always coming up to us and saying hi and good luck and we're following you, and or tough loss last weekend. Hear that one a lot. All that sorts of stuff. I mean, to be able to have that sort of interaction, means a lot for us. It's pretty darn cool because curling in Canada is different than everywhere else. I mean, in a lot of cases, you're looked at as, a little bit of a celebrity, whereas across the world it maybe hasn't gotten to that point yet. But we're very appreciative of the support that we get, from everybody across the country.
Well, it's been such a pleasure watching you guys and following you through this season. I wish you all the best, because I'm actually going to the men's, where I've never seen a competitive professional curling before in person. So I've got tickets to that championship weekend, and I'm not going to show any bias, but hope to see you there. Yeah,
you betcha. Us too.
All right.
You bet.
Yeah, take care, Matt. Good luck the rest of the way. And as I said, hope to see you here. That's Matt Dunstone, known as the Sheriff. He is the skip for Manitoba. They are in sole possession of first place in Pool A. Just behind him, Kevin Cooey. 7-1 in Pool A, and then in Pool B, it's a tight race there as well. You've got Gushu Botcher at 7-1, and then McEwen right behind them at 6-2. So it's going to be close. Sunday, of course, is championship game. Saturday, you'll have your semifinals. It's a lot of fun to watch. And again, the men's worlds are coming here in April 1st to the 9th. There's still tickets available. That's down at TD Place Arena. This is just breaking news that we're getting, by the way. Pierre-Carl Paladeau is the new owner of the Montreal Alouettes. The Montreal businessman was unveiled as the franchise owner by the CFL at a news conference this morning at Olympic Stadium. He is the president and executive officer of Quebecor. Has a net worth of about $1.9 billion. So they were looking for someone with deep pockets. I mean, that's what the CFL, they really need some good ownership. So this is really great news for the league and, of course, for Montreal Alouettes fans, because there was talk that if nobody stepped up, this team had the possibility of folding. And I was just saying to Matt Dunstone, I'm a huge sports fan, and I'm a CFL fan, and to lose, one of very few franchises in a league as old as the CFL would have been really a disastrous. So congratulations to all those Montreal Alouettes fans out there. All right, going to take a quick break. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show, and you're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hey, I'm Ash Ravens. I'm a singer-songwriter in Ottawa, Canada. I'm performing this week on Encore Ottawa 3, so please be sure to tune in and hope you enjoy it.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll introduce you to the Canto Sentimentos String Quartet. They have an upcoming performance, so we'll get all the details on that and, of course, talk about their history. We'll also talk to the Workers' History Museum, and we'll introduce you to two fabulous entrepreneurs. One has been in business for 20 years, and one just starting out. All that and more on Friday's Daytime, and you can only watch it right here on Rogers TV.
For 25 years, you've been helping to make our roads safer by doing the right thing. You've been the designated driver, you've stayed over, called home, you've called a cab or a friend, and planned ahead. Let's keep doing the right thing. Support sober driving by getting yourself and your friends home safely.
Do the right thing.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
I'm Julian Armour from Music and Beyond. Join us for a new show this spring on Rogers called Music and Beyond Presents.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here filling in for Sam, and it's pretty much my favorite segment on the Sam. And you know what? I mean, Sam says the same thing, so I'm not saying anything different. Always excited to have him on the show. Movie reviewer Keith Whittier joining us here on the show. How are you today, Keith?
I'm fantastic, Derek. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Wonderful to have
pressure.
you. Yeah, no pressure at all. He's the best in the business, folks. He's the greatest man alive. No pressure whatsoever, Keith.
No pressure whatsoever. Here we go.
Yeah, let's dive right in. Let's start with, because we needed another one in this series, it is time for Scream 6.
I had this secret. There's a darkness inside of me. It followed me here. And it's gonna keep coming for us. We share a certain history. This isn't like any other ghost face. What is this place? A shrine. We've got to lure him in. We execute him.
Oh, I just love the soundtrack already. Boom. Just come. Okay, Keith, the honest question here is, did we really need a Scream 6? What did you think of this film?
We absolutely did not need a Scream 6.
Okay.
I mean, the last one, I don't even know. I saw it on Paramount Plus, and I'm thinking, did it go directly to Paramount Plus, or did it have a short stint in the theater? Because, of course, it came out during, like, the height of the pandemic.
Right.
But regardless, here's the thing. To answer your question, no, we didn't need another one. But that being said, it's not the worst movie. It's just at the point where I find all of these Scream films so incredibly interchangeable. Even though the baton is being passed off from from David Arquette, Courtney Cox, and Nev Campbell to this new group of actors, which includes Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega. It's still rinse and repeat. We've got this killer or killers, we don't know, out on the loose. They're tracking our main stars who have now moved to New York, because that's the safest place to be. And now we see it's during Halloween, so of course every other person is in this ghost face mask, and they're trying to survive. I mean, the formula does work because people go to see it. There were a lot of people in the theater last night.
Okay.
It's going to do well in the box office. So we're going to get a lot of them. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're great films. They're not terrible. I just don't, with that same vein, Vin Diesel shouldn't be running around thinking he's a great actor because there's been like 10 Fast and the Furious movies. No,
right.
People like the action. People like, the fact that it's like a slasher film, the fact that it's a throwback to movies like Halloween and those films. And the person who started this all off, Kevin Williamson, was very inspired by those films. So it's not a terrible movie by any means. It's not a great one. It's kind of in the middle. But we're seeing it because of the fact that people seem to have a demand for it, so they keep making it. But it's at the point where, again, for me, it's very much rinse and repeat. And if you were to put Scream 3 or Scream 6 in front of me, I don't know if I could be able to tell the difference.
Is the acting any good, Keith? Okay, all right. Let's move. I'm actually for this next one, I'm surprised we could actually get a clip where there's no cursing. So next up is Chris Rock with Selective Outrage.
And a lot of people go, Chris, how come you didn't do nothing back? How come you didn't do nothing back that night? Because I got parents. That's why. Because I was raised. Okay? I got parents.
This is what everyone's talking about, is basically, that from my understanding, is that's like the last 10 minutes where he just goes after Will Smith and Jada on this. But putting that aside, what about we'll get to that in a moment, but what about the rest of his stand-up?
Here's the thing. This was, an event. This was a live event on Netflix. They haven't done this before. They had an intro show to the special. They had the special which aired live, and then they had like a post show. The special itself was great. I think Chris Rock's comedy has always been strong. Yes, he pushes the envelope a little bit, but at the same token, a lot of the things that he says are very much on point. Not from this special, but one of his previous specials, he had this line. He's like, "You mean to tell me we can find Saddam Hussein in a cave in Iraq, but you can't tell me who shot Tupac?" Like just little tidbits like that. I mean, he's hilarious. So yes, a lot of conversation will be around his response to the whole Will Smith situation, but outside of that, the other hour of the show is still very, very funny. And nobody's safe when Chris has his target on you. And again, he's making very, very solid observations. So it does foster discussion. I think he's one of the best comedians working right now. He's the only comedian who's commanded a $40 million paycheck from Netflix. So good for him. Very, very strong show.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to that. Another great comedian, of course, is Kevin Hart, but he also does a ton of films, and his latest, not his latest, I guess, this one's streaming, and it's called Die Hart, H-A-R-T. Listen in.
My whole life, I've dreamed of becoming an action hero.
Now, Kev, people are just raving about this new movie of yours. You are working with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, playing his comedy sidekick again.
Here's my question. Why can't I be an action star?
Okay, tell me about Die Hard. I mean, because Die Hard 2 is already out as well, right?
I don't believe it's released yet. I think it's about to be.
It's coming.
So basically what this is this is on Prime Video. But before it was on Prime Video, there was an app that was out. I want to say it's probably close to the beginning of COVID, called Quibi. I don't know if you remember that. It was basically a bunch of like videos that were like very, very short, like 8-9-minute videos.
Yes.
So this was a series on Quibi, which was, again, as the trailer alludes to, Kevin Hart wants to be taken seriously, wants to be a lead action star. So to that end, he goes to action training camp, which is hosted by a character played by John Travolta. He plays this guy named Ron Wilcox. Very funny character. What they basically did was they took the entire series, or like all these clips strung them together into a feature film. And the editing is fantastic. It's seamless as we go through this whole 90-minute journey as he's basically trying to become an action star. I think it was funny. Would I have been as excited if I had to see it in the theater? I don't know, maybe not. But I think on a streaming service, it's a great alternative to help with the endless scrolling that we all go through. And to your point, Die Hard 2 is coming. I don't know how they're going to do a sequel of it, but I'm here for it.
But he's got such great delivery, right?
He really does.
There's just something about it that it's sarcastic, but it's endearing at the same time. Like, he's got a great skill with that.
Absolutely. So very, very good film.
Always enjoy talking to you, Keith. Have yourself a fabulous weekend, and of course, we'll catch up with you next Friday.
Sounds great. You take care.
All right, you as well. That's Keith Whittier, movie reviewer. Again, you got your Scream 6, Chris Rock, Selective Outrage. I'm really looking forward to that one. I've heard some mixed reviews, but Keith certainly loved it. And of course, Die Hard going to a streaming service. We're going to take a quick break here. We got your news coming up. Derek Fage here, filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Meg from Fit Over 50. On our next episode, we're going to be doing a full body workout using resistance bands. You can find bands at any local sporting goods store. So go get yours and hope to see you then.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
Think it's okay to drive high? Think again. Drug-impaired driving is as illegal as drunk driving, and in Ontario, the penalties are the same. If police suspect you're driving under the influence of drugs of any kind, or a combination of drugs and alcohol, and you fail a roadside test, your license will be suspended immediately for up to 30 days. You'll pay a penalty of $198. And you can be charged with a criminal offense of impaired driving, the same as alcohol. Driving high is never okay.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
My name is Joel Tamas. This is Red Heaven, and we are going to be playing the Encore concert here in Ottawa. I got goosebumps just looking at the lighting and the sound, and it's very exciting to show up at a place like Shankman.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 101.1 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 10th. Good afternoon. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, -4. In Smiths Falls, it is -3. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The federal government is now officially launching public consultations on a foreign agent registry, which aims to block foreign interference in our democracy. Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino made the announcement this morning, saying consultations begin immediately and will continue until the 9th of May.
Consultations will involve direct engagements with communities, stakeholders, and the general public, and these consultations will inform the path forward.
And the registry would require people who act on behalf of a foreign state to advance its goals to disclose their ties to the government employing them. Failing to comply could result in fines or even prison time. With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
It's a mostly cloudy day again for Ottawa and Smiths Falls. A few sunny breaks, and that's it. The weekend is very quiet and seasonal, but we have measurable snow in the forecast for Monday. So later today, a few flurries possible, and even through Saturday, but nothing that's really impactful. But Monday and Tuesday, we have back-to-back snow, 5 to 10 centimeters Monday, with an additional 5 centimeters on Tuesday with very windy conditions, so some blowing and drifting snow as well. For today, the guaranteed high +1.
City News time is 12:02. The federal government is starting a crackdown on provinces that allow doctors to charge patients for medically necessary services, and it's costing them tens of millions of dollars. City News Parliament Hero reporter Cormac McSweeney has the story.
The warning comes in a letter sent by the federal health minister to his provincial counterparts, and Minister Jean-Yves Duclos says the feds are already clawing back a large chunk of health transfers.
The amounts levied a total of over $82 million in respect of patient charges levied during 2020-2021 for medically necessary services that should be accessible to patients at no cost.
8 provinces will be seeing reductions in their next health transfer from the federal government over fees charged to patients, mainly for diagnostic services such as MRIs and CT scans. They included BC, Alberta, Quebec, Nova Scotia. Ontario's also hit, but only for $32,000 due to some private clinics charging patients for abortions. Now, the Canada Health Act allows the feds to reduce health transfers when provinces charge user fees for medically necessary health services. Duclos has written to every province and territory to say that there will be a new interpretation of the act that will address things like virtual patient visits. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
I am Damilola Unime for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage, host of Daytime Ottawa on Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. And at this time of day, Sam always opens up her door, invites people in for lunch. It's lunch with Sam, but today it's lunch with Derek. And pulling up a chair at the table today is Tim Powers, Vice Chairman of Summa Strategies and Managing Director of Abacus Data. Good afternoon, Tim.
Derek, I got to tell you, guys got to get that right. They promoted me I'm chairperson now.
Chairperson. What are these people doing?
That means anything. You see, you just can ridicule me more. That's all.
That's okay. We're going to take Noah aside and punish him a little bit later on for that.
It's all Noah's fault.
Exactly.
Terrible.
Always blame the producer, Tim. It's very important.
Never, Derek, never.
Welcome to the chairperson of Summa Strategies, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Powers joining us, and Dean Tester, housing advocate with the local group Make Housing Affordable. Good afternoon, Dean.
How you doing?
I'm great. Are you also chairperson, or can I just call you housing advocate?
Well, look, I founded this organization, so it doesn't really get much bigger than founder, I don't think.
Okay, I'm going with founder and housing advocate.
Put it by Dean. That's proper, right? Well done.
Excellent work, gentlemen. We're off to a flying start. I love it. Well, considering, Dean and your passion as a housing advocate, let's start with that because with pandemic era temporary shelters still operating in Ottawa community centers, the city is looking to transition away from their use and find more permanent housing for vulnerable people. But I mean, that's the real key issue here, Dean, is finding more permanent housing. And we're just not doing a very good job of it in this city, are we?
No, and there's a lot of different things to blame and a lot of fingers to point, but the reality is when it comes to affordable housing, social housing, which is what we're talking about here, shelter for people who need a hand up and need to be in shelter, the reality is we just need more funding for it. That is the number one problem, and this starts with the municipal government because they have the most direct involvement, but the province and the federal government both need to step up with money. You don't have to go that far back in time to a time where we built hundreds of thousands of social housing units every decade, and that was before Jean Chrétien. A huge amount of social housing was built in Ontario and around Canada. Budgets tightened in the 90s, and we never really picked back up when budgets expanded. So, we have a huge deficit. It was just a couple of weeks ago, I was on the show after the federal minister of housing was here in Ottawa celebrating, I think it was 18 new units. Well, we have 12,000 people on the wait list in Ottawa. Like, it's just a complete joke. We're not even close to what we need to do this. And I'll tell you why this funding is actually so important. One, to get people the help they need, but two, if you think about it, how much money do we spend on temporary shelters? How much money do we spend on police and paramedics and hospital visits for folks who are living on the streets? The cost of someone living on the streets can be upwards of $100,000 a year. The cost to put them in a home and get them support is probably around $30,000 to $40,000. So, we're really talking about saving people money in the long run. But there is a huge capital cost. There's an upfront cost because we've been negligent for the better part of 30 years.
Yeah, Tim, I think part of the frustration for me is a lot of this talk, calling it an emergency and a housing crisis and a homelessness crisis back in 2020. It seems to be purely, symbolism. We've just, and I know the additional funding is in addition to, what they're already spending. I spoke to Mayor Mark Sutcliffe last week, but, $15 million additional dollars to affordable housing really in a $5.5 billion budget just doesn't seem to cut it, Tim.
Well, 2 points. I think you've nailed it there, Derek. There's so much symbolism around this issue, and as Dean, who knows far better than I, has pointed out, it's not real action. I think politicians hope the symbolism will mask the fact that there's a lack of action. The second thing that really stood out for me, and it's one I haven't heard very often, and that's probably my ignorance as opposed to a lack of the message being delivered, is the one Dean just delivered on, the actual individual cost of having a person housed and giving them that opportunity versus not. That's a hugely powerful economic argument, and I think even as that needs to be understood and more comprehensively accepted, because I think even the broader public probably has its own misconceptions about what housing means. I remember the story not too long ago in this city of the Salvation Army going into Vanier, and remember what angst that apparently was causing people. And I think a lot of that, again, the NIMBYism driven in that neighborhood may again have been part and parcel of misconceptions about what having social housing, as it can be described as in your neighborhood. Get those economic arguments out there more vigorously, because they're pretty potent. Yeah,
and Tim, I'm glad you bring up the Salvation Army, because that is in my neighborhood. I live in Vanier, and I support it. And I think again what gets lost in that particular situation, Dean, is the fact that it's not that there's a shelter necessarily going in there. Is it the right kind of shelter? Because we're not necessarily talking about housing here, right? That again is not a permanent housing solution, and I think we have to stop dealing with these stopgap measures, Dean, and find people actual places to live, along with, as you said, Dean, the programs to help them get on their feet. I mean, that's what we need to concentrate on more than anything.
Yeah, and we've seen housing first models work in other cities, and other cities are working towards them. I know in Toronto, those numbers I just cited are actually come from a slideshow the city of Toronto put together. So there's highly relevant examples in our country and elsewhere around the world. And the reality is, when you talk about NIMBYism, it's a funny thing, because so many of these reactions, they're just automatic, right? Yeah. It's, you assume, the low-income people, it's going to bring crime to my neighborhood, or you assume, there's apartments going up, it's going to drive down my property values, and almost always the opposite is actually true. But there is a lack of understanding of these issues, and you definitely see groups try and prey on this misinformation for political reasons, and so it's hard to see progress in the city sometimes. But we're I think about 4 months into this session of council. I think we have a really good council who understands these issues. The challenge is, as Tim said, how do we get over talking about this as a principle and put it into action? Because I've never met a politician who says, oh yeah, we shouldn't have any more affordable housing, but the number of people who are willing to stake their political capital on it, it's pretty slim.
Yeah, and I guess, Tim, it's convincing people that, it's coming to all neighborhoods. And maybe that's what we need to reflect on a little bit more, is I think we look at specific neighborhoods in our city, and I think this is the same with cities across Canada, and say, oh, it's coming to one specific neighborhood and they're bringing everyone to the same space. Maybe we need to reflect on that and start looking at spreading out the housing in all our communities across across the region, right?
Yeah, well, and I don't know if this is the right example, and again, I'll defer to Dean on this, but this reminds me in large measure of, and it is linked to in the early to mid 90s, the change in mental health caring and treatment. There was a big push made by the National Mental Health Associations then around community living. Well, to me, it's very similar, and it's taken a long time for people to understand that mental health doesn't just exist in the Somerset ward, or mental health issues don't just exist in the Somerset ward, they exist in different places as well. And the same is true with housing challenges. How do you tell that story? How do you make people get that it's of all our benefit to create conditions whereby people who need housing and assistance are helped? It's economically beneficial if you don't philosophically ascribe to it. So, there are different options, to put it quite rawly, you can choose that may make you suddenly convert to the idea that, okay, I get why that house should go there, and maybe I shouldn't be opposed to it for the sake of being opposed to it now that I know there's an economic benefit. That may be crass, that may be callous, but that may be another way to get at people understanding that we don't want a city of gated communities where, all right, we won't have any housing here because, we don't want that. So whether we have a gate in front of us or not, it's like we have a gated community.
Yeah, no, well said, Tim, and you as well, Dean, on that. We're going to take a quick break because I've got some other topics I want to jump in here on Lunch with Derek. We'll be back with Tim Powers and Dean Tester right after this. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
Your mouth can do a lot of amazing things. And your mouth can save a life.
Hi, I'm Tom Wong. I'm just one of close to 1,000 Canadians in search of a stem cell match. We need your help.
A simple swab is all you need to register on the National Stem Cell Database. You could be the one to save a life. Find the hero in you.
We were born in Canada. We spoke English. On the streets, we weren't welcome. But on the field, we were the assassin. Vancouver's champions. Everyone cheered for us. Our people had a voice. Then Canada declared war on Japan. They took us from our homes, called us enemies, forced us into camps. But we brought the game with us. Baseball helped get us through the internment.
The Vancouver Asahi were among the 22,000 Japanese Canadians interned during the Second World War. The team never played another game.
On the next episode of Simply Cooking by Chef, as Canadians, we love our chips. Join us as we put an Italian twist on a crowd favorite, burgers and fries.
Your City News forecast for today could be a windfall of cash. With our weather guarantee, if we're off by 3 degrees, you could win. Enter at ottawa.citynews.ca. And if you hear your name on Wake Up with Rob Snow at 7:21 a.m., call in to claim your cash.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Sam. Sam is off today and all of next week. It is Lunch with Derek today, and it's usually Lunch with Sam, but Sam being off, it's Lunch with Derek. We are joined again by Tim Powers, Chairperson of Summa Strategies and Managing Director of Abacus Data, and Dean Tester, Housing Advocate and founder of the local group Make Housing Affordable. Gentlemen, let's turn our attention to what we've been seeing from the CEOs of Canada's top grocery stores who were summoned this week. The government has been asking questions. You know, my question to the two of you, and I'll start with you, Tim, is the government asking the right questions? Do you think the grocers are to blame? There's also this idea of an excess profit tax. First of all, what did you think of the questioning? We'll start there, Tim.
Well, I think we should also clarify it was a parliamentary committee.
That's right.
So that changes the dynamic of it all. So it has all party members. So to answer your question, Derek, I thought the whole thing was just an unfortunate circus, because whether it be the CEOs trying to make their point that they're not, excessively profiteering, or the MPs trying to look like they were great populist protectors of us all and trying to make our food cheaper, it didn't leave any Canadian, I think, going to a grocery store today with the prices cheaper and understanding why things are the way they are. So as an exercise for you, me, Dean, and everybody else listening today who may be going into a grocery store, not going to change a goddamn thing to bring the Lord's name in vain here. I just thought it was a waste of time. Did the CEOs make their arguments? I don't know. I think I think there's a lot of the public that's predispositioned, whether they made their arguments or not, they still think they're making too much money, and that's not good enough for us consumers.
Dean, what do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree. It's a lot of political theater. I mean, if you were to ask the CEOs and people in that industry, how do we bring down the cost of food, we might have got some thoughtful answers around, how do we make things cheaper for farmers? How do we make it cheaper to ship goods? How do we get things places faster and on time and reduce costs in that way? I think there probably are government solutions to try and bring down the cost of food, but they don't involve hauling CEOs before our committee and yelling at them to make a political point and try and make your way to the Daily News. This whole thing about, an excess profit tax, I mean, it kind of comes down to: are they making too much profits, or is there just not enough competition in this industry? Right. So
yeah, and that's a good point, right? When you look at Canada, some people have pointed out the fact that sorry to cut you off there. I wanted to point out that there's a lot of those discount grocery stores down the United States, and I mean they have pretty much 10 times the population of Canada. So the competition, it's just like airlines in Canada, right? You don't have enough people to bring down some of these costs. I think that's part of it. And as far as an excess profit tax, nobody likes to pay more tax, and I get the feeling that that's not going to help us as consumers. They may just start passing along that excess tax to us on top of everything else. Dean?
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly what would happen, and we see that. We've got a couple industries in Canada who have basically government-mandated price fixing in the form of the dairy industry, for example, with supply management, and those costs have skyrocketed too, right? And it's because the cost of goods has gone up, the cost of producing goods, the cost to ship things has gone up. And all this populist hand waving is not really doing anything to fix it. What are we doing to address the actual causes of these prices.
Yeah, I love what you said, Dean, about the fact that, why not bring them up and ask them for solutions, because I'm sure they're the ones in that business. They certainly would have ideas on how to solve some of these issues. Let's move on to something else. I'll head over to you, Tim. Do you think the Liberal government is failing to ensure foreign election interference is not a threat? I have the same reaction as you just saying that question to you, Tim. But over to you.
Well, if I were at a parliamentary committee, I would pound on the desk, Derek, and say, "Damn right, Derek."
Yeah.
What might I say to you and the broader audience right now? I think the federal government is failing in convincing us that they have this under control, whatever this may be and whatever may need to be under control. I think, the Prime Minister obviously announced what he announced on Monday, I believe it was, the special rapporteur, the 2 committee investigations, and potentially a foreign agent registry. That's all fine and dandy, but, I look at our Abacus poll today, which got into this issue, and most Canadians aren't buying the Prime Minister. I think they've just done a really poor job of bringing comfort here to people, and maybe they can't bring comfort here to people, but the Prime Minister equally has looked evasive. The final point I'd make on that is, if you go back to that scrum he did earlier in the week, and Tana McCharles, who and is from my province of Newfoundland and Labrador, been around for a long time, is a very able journalist, was just trying to get him to say yes or no as to whether the reported memo leaks of the day he had seen or not seen, and he can't answer that. Now, there's reasons he can't answer that have nothing to do with national security and everything to do with, well, if you knew, sir, why didn't you act? Or if you didn't know, why weren't you on top of the job? So not being able to answer that, simple things like that, make it look like this thing is wildly out of control.
Dean, the latest polls show obviously that Canadians care about the situation, but I just wonder, like most news stories, once this has got sort of a week has gone by, are Canadians going to really go back to caring what really matters, and that that is affordability and healthcare and education and so on? Does this have enough legs to really go for a very long time?
Yeah, I'm skeptical about people's attention spans. I think 10 years ago something like this would have sunk a government, and today, the Trudeau government seems happy to just shrug off every scandal and soldier on as if nothing happened. And it's quite frankly up to the opposition to show up and prove themselves to be a credible enough opposition that Canadians will want to go another way. What I will say about this is that it's clear the government is not being clear with Canadians.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that they've let it get this far without giving us a straight answer on anything. Things like this hurt perceptions of governments, whether or not this is the voting issue that people are thinking about on election day. I think they'll remember the feeling that they couldn't trust this government.
Just to end with a little bit of fun, because it is a Friday. I'm not sure if either of you have kids or have got plans as far as March break goes. But Tim, do you have any March break plans?
Well, I got a very active 7-year-old. First thing tomorrow morning, his hockey team, which I'm the coach of, are playing their parents, and we've got a big bet as to who is going to be giving and receiving orders after that. Then my son and I are going to Newfoundland to see my mother. We tried to get there at Christmas, but the weather intervened, and it's March, so it could intervene again. But those are my plans.
Wonderful. Well, enjoy that. That should be a lot of fun. And I'm a hockey dad myself. My son's now 23, so we're out of hockey now. But I know how much fun that is, especially at that age. Dean, how about yourself?
I've got a solid week of work planned. Nothing too exciting over here.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining us and going through some of the issues of the day here on Lunch with Derek.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye, guys. That's Tim Powers, Chairperson of Summa Strategies and Managing Director of Abacus Data, and Dean Tester, Housing Advocate and founder of the local group Make Housing Affordable. Coming up after the break, as you know, the Ottawa Business Journal is now part of our our team here. We're really excited to have them on board because we do, the business lunch here on the Sam Laprade Show. We'll share some of the best stories happening here in Ottawa. So we'll break down some of those stories. I mentioned the Ottawa Business Journal. Well, David Sally, editor of the Ottawa Business Journal, joining us coming up after the break. And I'll introduce you to a fantastic entrepreneur, local owner of the Comedy Club, a co-owner of the Laugh Lounge Comedy Club, will be joining us at around 12:45 as well. This is Derek Fage filling in for Sam Laprade. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Here comes the 67. They score! How's that for your first of the season?
Another highlight reel goal.
Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play!
67's action on Rogers TV.
After a night out with your friends, not having a plan for a safe ride home can leave you in a bad spot. You could end up riding in a police car, an ambulance, or a hearse. These unplanned modes of transportation can be a costly choice and do not take you home. Your plan could include a designated driver, a taxi, or public transit. Drink responsibly, choose your ride, and have a plan for a safe ride home.
Visit arrivealive.org to find out more.
Once upon a time, in a nursery rhyme, there were 3 bears. 1, 2, 3 bears. And they went a-walking in the cool woods a-talking while their porridge began.
Rogers TV invites you to let your imagination roam as we present Ottawa Storytellers. Each week we'll present a collection of original creative stories and inspirations for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers on Rogers TV.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Hey, I'm Ash Ravens. I'm a singer-songwriter in Ottawa, Canada. I'm performing this week on Encore Ottawa 3, so please be sure to tune in and hope you enjoy it.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 10th. Good afternoon. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, -4. In Smith Falls, it is -3. And here's what's making news this hour. Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos is cutting transfer payments to 8 provinces that wrongly charge people for healthcare services. Those include MRIs and CT scans that should be covered by the public plan. The cuts total $82 million. The federal government brought in a new policy 3 years ago to make sure test fees were covered, and Duclos is warning the provinces and territories about increases in private fees being charged for other medical services. A couple of huge names among those playing at the Ottawa Jazz Festival to lead up a music festival to summer. Starts on June 23rd, lasts 8 days, and is at Confederation Park, City Hall, and the NAC. With still another headlines to come, we know already that both Buddy Guy and Herbie Hancock will be among the headliners performing. And there are over 10 million active Air Miles accounts, and now the Loyalty Rewards program will be taken over by a major Canadian bank. BMO has agreed to terms with Loyalty One company. The exact purchase price not yet known. Loyalty One, the airline's parent company, had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the U.S. earlier this week. The president of Air Miles claims the deal will have no impact on reward miles balances or on people's ability to redeem their miles. And BMO says the acquisition will only accelerate the growth of the program, with ownership of it now based in Canada. City News time is 12:32. I am Damilola Unime. For News and Time, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Business Lunch on City News, brought to you by the Ottawa Business Journal.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Sam as she takes some time off during the March break. Well, that young man just said it for me. Brought to you by the Ottawa Business Journal, the Business Lunch here on the Sam Laprade Show. And with that, we are joined by the editor of the Ottawa Business Journal, David Sally. David, welcome.
Thanks. How are you, Derek?
I'm doing great, David. Always a pleasure talking to you because you always bring these fantastic stories. You guys are following wonderful stories and these great success stories here in Ottawa. What are you working on these days?
Well, yeah, Derek, it was a big week actually on a number of fronts in especially in tech. We were really talking about a number of interesting stories. Derek, maybe some companies that aren't that well known, but might be if things go well for them. This is kind of a neat story that really about a company that really kind of found its niche during the pandemic. Get it? Technologies.
Oh yes,
yeah. So you may have remember Get It Local. They started this. They originally were their plan. This was in 2019. Remember, was to deliver food to fans in their seats at stadiums, food and drinks. And of course, they started the company. Ryan Hardy, Ben Lacroix were the founders. They started it. Well, not at the best time to launch something for live events. Late 2019. Next thing you know, everything shut down. So they pivot into the food delivery space, and they ended up finding, as I say, a pretty good niche there. They now work with about 200 restaurants and other businesses in Ottawa doing last mile delivery. They work in partnership with a local company called Responsible Choice, whose drivers deliver these. They've made 50,000 deliveries now over the past 2.5 years. Beyond the Pale, Zach's Diner, the Grand Pizzeria, there's all kinds of businesses that use them. Well, the end of last week, they announced they're merging with a Vancouver company called Perk Labs. And now this is about kind of trying to expand their reach and their offering. So this is Perk Labs is actually a publicly traded company on the Canadian Securities Exchange, the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, and it actually was the acquirer. It bought Get It in an all-share deal worth about $4.7 million.
Wow.
So what's going to happen here? The idea is, I talked to Ryan Hardy about this the other day. Perk Labs, what they do is they make software, they make apps, things like loyalty apps, payment apps, online ordering apps. So those are which are obviously a burgeoning field in the hospitality industry. We're seeing all kinds of players in this space doing different aspects of it, whether it's Open Table or Stripe with point of sale. But Hardy was telling me their idea is to kind of bring Get It's delivery expertise, marry that with Perk Labs app making expertise, and voila, you've got this, what he likes to call a three-pillared force. That's what he's hoping. So you've got last mile delivery, mobile ordering, and digital payment.
So you'd be looking at David going after the likes of like DoorDash, Skip the Dishes, that kind of thing.
Well,
am I right?
Well, right, exactly. I mean, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, how are you going to compete with DoorDash, Skip the Dishes, Uber Eats? They've kind of got they're kind of the first movers in this space and have a dominant market share. And I asked Ryan about that, and he said, well, yes, they're going to compete with them, but that's not really what they're going to be. We don't want to do the same thing. We want to be this head to toe, as he put it, service that does delivery, but it also integrates a delivery platform with these payment platforms, with these seat booking platforms. Do that all sort of in one. You don't have to go to these different companies to get that.
Right.
We'll do it all for you, and we'll do white label stuff. That's their other, and he sees a big upside there potentially in developing custom branded apps for whether it could be restaurants, but it could be bigger players, stadiums, hotels, you name it, where those types of things are needed. And he says right now there's not this all-in-one place where you can go and get all of these services in a one-stop shop.
It sounds like a great idea. I mean, it's really a hybrid, right, of trying to put all these things together.
Exactly. So that's their kind of idea. Perk Labs is not like it's been around for almost 10 years, and it has yet to really make any headway in the market. They spent more than $40 million developing their software, but have literally sold only last year. Their revenues were just over $30,000.
Wow.
So Hardy knows they have their work cut out for them, and he says he's prepared to put in the blood and sweat that they're going to need to get over that hump until they actually prove that they do have a great value proposition, and he believes they do. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how
looking
it all
forward to
plays
following
out.
that. Yeah, absolutely. What else have you got? What else are you working on over there, David?
Well, we've got a couple of other interesting stories this week, and one of them, of course, as you know, Derek, we had this week. We heard a lot about the testimony at the House of Commons from the big grocery CEOs, right? Everybody's talking about food inflation. What did Stats Can say in January? Grocery prices up over 11%, almost double the overall rate of inflation. Anytime you go to the store, you go to the checkout counter, you're feeling it in your wallet, no doubt. Well, there are some companies in Eastern Ontario that feel like they can maybe, sort of make some hay here, if you will, in the agricultural technology field, and help with those grocery prices. I talked to a company called Cultivated. They're out of Cornwall. They call themselves a vertical farming brokerage. They arrange the sale and purchase of indoor farms, vertical farming systems, all that sort of stuff. They're working with some of the industry's biggest tech suppliers all over the world. They got $3 million in seed capital last year. They're working on another round that's going to be upwards of $10 million. They expect to close that soon. They've doubled their headcount over the last 12 months. So they're looking to kind of help people set up vertical farming operations where they can grow food indoors, whatever, more efficiently, grow it closer to consumers, cut down on transportation costs, water usage, all of that sort of stuff. Maybe that'll help make food cheaper and cut down on some of those supply chain snafus that have really helped drive up the cost of food. So,
well, yeah, you think of remote areas just come to mind, and I really think, I've talked about this idea before, and it really sounds like it might end up being the future of farming, David.
Well, exactly. And we know there's other companies. There's an Ottawa company called Grocer, which makes these containers that you can grow hydroponic food in areas where you really can't grow food in soil, like in the far north. They're growing. Another company, Fieldless Farms, based in Ottawa. I talked to their founder, John Lomo, this week. They make two types of hydroponically grown lettuce. They can't keep it on shelves. They sell it to Farm Boy across Ontario. They're going to be adding more stores as they triple their capacity over the summer. They got nearly $20 million in cash last year. So they're really seeing big growth, as it were, in their field. Derek, pardon the pun, Derek, but they're really seeing how they can make an impact, and it's becoming Eastern Ontario a real kind of a vertical farming mecca.
Yeah, almost. No kidding, and that there are two from Ottawa. I mean, there's just time and time again when I speak to you, David, and of course Michael from the Ottawa Business Journal, just the successes of and the innovation in this city is just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is this agri-tech, not something that pops to mind for immediately when you think of Ottawa, but we are certainly a big player in it. Absolutely.
Got time for one more story, David. What else have you got?
Well, it's been interesting. We'll stick with the tech theme here.
Okay.
And in honor of International Women's Week, really, let's focus for a second on a firm that really has been spearheaded by one of my favorite entrepreneurs in the Ottawa area. The company is called Fan Saves. Their co-founder is Shannon Ferguson. She co-founded it with her partner Chris McCarthy. About 6 years ago, and it is basically it's like a digital. The way they describe themselves, they're a digital coupon platform. So all those things where you used to have to cut stuff over, and they work mostly with sports teams. So in the old days, you would maybe put coupons in some sort of a flyer. Well, now it's all digital, and they are able to track they know exactly where every consumer uses all of the coupons, which ones are getting the most value, which ones aren't being used. That's incredible intelligence for sponsors to have, and they're making big headway. They just joined an accelerator, Comcast NBC Universal runs a sports tech accelerator. Every year they take 10 companies from almost 1,000 applicants across the world. And this Ottawa, well, technically they're South Grenville company, but they have an Ottawa, and they were one of the chosen few from around the world to make it into this accelerator. They were down in Florida last week talking to the PGA Tour, talking to NASCAR officials about how they can integrate their tech into some of those organizations or others perhaps, and they've really grown. They've grown their number of customers has doubled in the last 2 years. They're working with about 70 groups now. They've got 1,000 companies that offer products via their app and discounts. So they really see this as sort of greenfield, because they have yet to actually land a big major league team. The Ottawa Senators are about to start piloting their platform. But they feel like once they can get onto some big league platforms, and they're talking to NFL, and NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball franchises right now, once they can break through into those leagues, then that's where the real big adoption and big money comes. So
no kidding.
They're another company to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I spoke to them on Daytime Auto. I think it was just before Christmas, and they were describing what they were doing, and I was just absolutely fascinating and get it as well. I spoke to I believe it was Ben as well. He's been on the show a couple of times, and those guys are just, I mean, all of these groups so innovative and so ambitious. Always a pleasure talking to you, David, because I don't think we pat ourselves on the back enough as a community and the great successes that we've seen come out of here and continue to come out. So thanks again for your time today, David. Really appreciate it.
No problem, Derek.
All right, take care. That's David Sally, editor of the Ottawa Business Journal, of course, partnering up with us here on the Sam Laprade Show. So happy to have them on board. Hey, we'll be back after the break to tell you about a fantastic comedy club here in Ottawa. I had a chance to talk to Nick Burden on Daytime Ottawa, as a matter of fact, just yesterday. Thought I would introduce him to our listeners here on City News, because he and his fellow co-owners are not only comedians, but have decided to put together a really unique club. We'll talk to Nick after the break about that club. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll introduce you to the Canto Sentimentos String Quartet. They have an upcoming performance, so we'll get all the details on that and, of course, talk about their history. We'll also talk to the Workers' History Museum, and we'll introduce you to two fabulous entrepreneurs. One has been in business for 20 years, and one just starting out. All that and more on Friday's Daytime, and you can only watch it right here on Rogers TV.
Summer days, summer nights, lots of things to do, places to go, and people to see. If you're having a few drinks, be sure to plan ahead and get home safely. We don't want to pick you up. Drinking drivers risk injuries to themselves and others and take chances with their license, their jobs, and their future. Remember what's at stake and choose your ride, whether you're the driver, the passenger, or the party host. Thanks for supporting sober driving. I hope we never meet.
Visit arrivealive.org to find out more.
There we go.
Hey, going back in, okay?
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV. It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
This is Meg from Fit Over 50. On our next episode, we're going to be doing a full body workout using resistance bands. You can find bands at any local sporting goods store. So go get yours and hope to see you then.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. We continue on our business lunch, brought to you by the Ottawa Business Journal. It gives us an opportunity to introduce you to some great local businesses. And I was introduced to our next guest a while back, just had him recently on Daytime Ottawa, and thought I'd get him here on City News and introduce him and his fantastic comedy club to our listeners. I'm joined by comedian and co-owner of the Laugh Lounge Comedy Club, Nick Burden. Nick, good afternoon. How are you, buddy?
Well, I'm doing great. I get to talk to you twice in 1 week. I feel like it's my birthday.
Lovely. And I believe is it your wife's birthday today?
My girlfriend's birthday
Your
is
girlfriend's
today,
birthday
yeah,
today.
so
Nice.
We got to keep this nice and short and sweet. We got lots of activities planned.
Okay, I'll make sure we do that for you. Let's talk a little bit about your background, Nick, and you know how you got into comedy. Tell our listeners how that came about, because I love the story.
Well, yeah, a lot of comedians definitely get into it, having a love for it at a very young age. A lot of people, always had an interest in it. Myself, it was actually a bet. It is a story that people like to hear. I just was... somebody bet me $100 and I wanted $100 and I'm really competitive. So jumped up on stage, proved the haters wrong, and then just started to like it, and then kind of took that, grabbed it by the reins, and just started traveling around all over Canada doing the jokes. And then here we are now. We got a wonderful comedy club here in the heart of the Byward Market for spreading the laughter to everybody in Ottawa.
I love it. And tell me about the idea of bringing this comedy club, because you came at this from a very unique perspective, Nick.
Yeah, so Laugh Lounge is definitely like a for artists by artists type of venue. My partners and I pride ourselves on having a really good working relationship with comedians, having our regular scheduled programming of having comics that have been the more established ones that have been on Just for Laughs, CBC, Crave, all the festivals, but also providing a venue for comics to put on their own independent shows and kind of showcase their abilities as well.
Yeah, you mentioned themes, and I know you have sort of your own style of amateur night. Tell me about that.
We do. We have a show that I'm going to try and bully you into being on one of these days. Yeah, so every club has their amateur night. Ours is a little bit different. It's called Pros and Joes. The pros being the regular working comics, working on their new material that they would take to the pro shows elsewhere in the city. And then the Joes aspect are the aspiring newcomers, maybe trying comedy for the first time, maybe it being a bucket list thing. Or, if they were just like me, being dared or put on by somebody else. And if there's anybody listening to this show that is that person or knows somebody that they think they have 6 minutes of stand-up in them, we encourage them to email us, laughlounge613@gmail.com, and we'll see what you have.
Yeah, because your philosophy is you honestly believe that everybody has 6 minutes in them, right? Everybody
has 6 minutes in them. Whether they have the stones to go up there in front of a crowd and do it, that is completely up to them.
Yeah, for sure. I've been in that space, and it's not easy. I mentioned to you earlier that I have the greatest respect for stand-up comedy. Well, and I think you believe too that having more comedy clubs in the city is essential. Why do you feel that way, Nick?
I do feel that having more comedy clubs is essential. I think just having more opportunity for comics to grow. I think when you have, only one or two entities, they're able to police the shows that young up-and-coming comics have, and having a third comedy club in town, gives more opportunities to comics, but also takes away the power from other venues, having that variety that comics have to kind of, get on stage more and cultivate their craft.
What's the response been from comedians? What impact has the Laugh Lounge made amongst comedians?
Well, from what I've seen a significant growth in a lot of comics that were overlooked or maybe just not given opportunities. It's obviously there is a lot of competition. It's not like back in the day when, you didn't have social media or YouTube and you had one spot a month at one comedy club that you had to, record. Now there's lots of open mics, but obviously everybody wants to get into the clubs. The clubs that's where all the people are at. That's where you're going to get noticed by, festivals and other big bookers like that. So it's just good to have that variety and have people have more venues and more opportunities to get their name out there and also get better.
Because it's tough, right? I mean, being a stand-up comedian, there's, you and I talked about this earlier in the week, is that, we lose, unfortunately, a lot of our talent to the United States. A lot of comedians turn to acting because they're looking for more opportunities. Those challenges continue today, Nick.
Absolutely. You're not going to see any comedians on Forbes top 100 list. That's just not a thing. And it's funny because a couple years ago, I was in a Hallmark Christmas movie, and one of the actresses, Callie Hawk, the scene that we were in was a talent show, and she did a stand-up comedy bit. And I looked at her delivery, and I was like, Callie, you've for sure done stand-up before. And she was like, yeah, I was on, season 2 of Last Comic Standing, moved to New York and realized how competitive the comedy game was, and then saw the difference in the income that I was making from acting and just jumped ship.
Wow. Yeah, and it's a real shit. I understand you're going out on tour soon, Nick. What's it like touring? Where are you headed? I think you're headed to Europe. Is that right?
I will be heading to Europe. I have a short pit stop in the Maritimes. I will be doing some shows in Nova Scotia. And then, yes, I will be heading off to Europe to do some shows in Vienna, Bratislava, Budapest, Prague, as well as Lisbon. English comedy in Europe is booming.
Really?
Ever since COVID. The way that it worked with them is with their lockdowns, comedy is considered, it's like a gray area for them. It's almost considered cabaret. So it's just like something that's going on at the bar. So all of these shows popped up during the pandemic and have continued to thrive ever since. So it's also a great opportunity for me as kind of a scouting mission to go and find some good English-speaking comics over in Europe that we can bring back here and showcase for our audiences here in Ottawa.
No kidding. Well, enjoy that. Your girlfriend's birthday. I know you've got big plans. Have a great time doing that. Tell everybody at home whereabouts you're located and where the best place to get tickets, Nick.
Well, we are located at 61 York Street in the heart of the Byward Market. We are open every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You can check us out on Eventbrite, which is where our tickets are sold. We also sell tickets at the door, and you can find out all the information on all of our shows on Instagram and Facebook, Laugh Lounge Ottawa.
Fantastic. Nick, thanks again for